It was a wild party before Bucky came to this place, but now it is a place where naked people run wild, and he feels that his way of throwing tear gas smoke bombs is quite wise. Otherwise, this sticky thing can be stepped on with just 1 foot, and he dare not touch it anywhere. God knows what he will touch. The smell in the air will obviously be very sour. In a sense, he is a helper. The air is purified here. So in fact, this place should be set on fire. But Bucky didn't care about the guys running around like headless chickens, but switched the prosthetic eye to thermal imaging mode. The scene in his eyes suddenly changed, and a group of excited guys all turned into a warmer color with a higher temperature. However, there are also a few guys who didn't run, but were in unbearable pain, wishing to roll all over the ground, but the temperature was very low or even far lower than the normal human body temperature. Just like the Blade Warrior, his normal body temperature is high. Bucky stood on the bar counter, condescending, touched the pistol and tactical knife on his waist with both hands, but put them down again. Instead, he first summoned the anti-material high-explosive sniper rifle from the system, and aimed the gun at the chest of a cold-blooded creature. Boom. With one shot, the target is instantly swallowed by the explosion. The high-explosive bullet exploded after hitting his chest cavity, directly blasting him into a firework of flesh and blood. His head flew high, hit the ceiling and turned into a lump, and his torso exploded and fell apart. The violent shock wave also directly blasted several guys not far away from him. Bucky looked at the limbs and the blood scum everywhere. Although they didn't spontaneously ignite without wind, they didn't gather together, and they couldn't turn back into a person. The system also gave a clear reminder. System information. You killed an ordinary vampire and got 100 experience points. This made him involuntarily turn up the corners of his mouth slightly, and nodded in satisfaction. The body of immortality was directly smashed to pieces, and he had to die if he didn't die. Roar. And Bucky's shot also made the other 3 cold-blooded creatures discover him, roared at him, and rushed over in a vague figure. Choo choo choo. Bucky retreated quickly, and the sniper rifle in his hand was replaced by a smart tracking submachine gun. In an instant, more than a dozen bullets were fired, covering the faces of 3 cold-blooded creatures, and smashing their heads into sieves. Pieces of red and white things splashed, and 3 cold-blooded creatures fell to the ground fiercely. Bucky didn't wait for the system prompt. He looked at the 3 bloody heads again, and couldn't help but admire in his heart. The vitality of the vampire is really amazing, it can't be killed. So what if this is the case? Bucky took off the glove on his left hand, turned around suddenly, and punched upwards hard. His rising dragon fist hit the chest of a cold-blooded creature that crawled over from the ceiling and played on his head. At the moment of the hit, Bucky's metal fist instantly ignited flames. When the flame touched the opponent, it turned the opponent into a flammable object, and with a bang, it turned the opponent into a human-shaped torch. What? Wherever the other party came from, Bucky punched him hard on the ceiling. As soon as he fell, he let out an extremely shrill scream. He hit the ground, twitching and struggling crazily, trying to put out the flames on his body, but he couldn't. And this flame is burning rapidly. Soon, the human-shaped torch turned into a pitch-black lump. The screaming and struggling stopped abruptly. But the burning didn't end yet. Instead, the scorched guy turned into red-hot charcoal from the inside out, and then quickly burned to ashes all over the place. I go. So sharp. Bucky looked at his palm that was emitting thick smoke and flames, and couldn't help being a little speechless. The effect exploded immediately. Well, it seems that the burning damage of this hellfire enchantment not only causes normal damage to evil spirits, it also does the same to vampires. It can also cause the most intense pain, and it is fatal. Anyway, it works. Bucky once again secretly praised the system for cheating, but at this moment, among the 3 cold-blooded animals whose brains had been shattered a lot, one of them recovered the fastest, and after just a short while, he stood up unsteadily. And he quickly woke up, locked on Bucky, the enemy, for the first time, roared, and rushed over again. And this time, his eyes turned blood red, bursting out with crazy bloodthirsty desire. This is to hate Bucky and want to eat him raw. There are too many people who want to eat me alive, and you're not the only one missing. Let's line up, cub. Bucky's eyes glowed like flowing magma, and the Eye of Judgment was thrown out without a sound. Roar. I fucked. However, Bucky discovered that the Eye of Judgment only slowed down the footsteps of this bloodthirsty monster, and then the guy shook his head and continued to rush forward as if nothing had happened. There is no sense of guilt at all for riding a horse. Bucky wanted to smack his forehead, and he realized in an instant that this is a vampire. No matter how many people he kills, in his consciousness, it is like humans slaughtering cattle, sheep and pigs. He is not from the Love X Association. Come guilt. The Eye of Judgment can't do it, so what about the head office of cyberpsychiatry? For this guy who had just recovered, his skull hadn't grown back, and he was still a little confused. Bucky threw himself close to him, but he really didn't take it seriously, and grabbed his neck. Strange to say, this vampire also pays attention to a hybrid advantage. Half vampire blade fighters are much stronger physically than these full vampires. The few vampires here, that is, about twice the human physical limit, are much worse than Bucky. Bucky easily subdued him, and a fit of cyberpsychosis quietly yelled at him, "Ouch." But seeing this guy stretching his neck like a bloodthirsty maniac, with a bang of joints, he insisted on biting Bucky's arm with a pair of sharp and slender canine teeth. Boom. However, this was Bucky's steel unicorn arm, and two of his teeth shattered directly. Bucky twisted his mouth, and the unicorn swung his arm round, and he threw it to the ground, and then volleyed. He was kicked violently by his whole body, and hit the leg of the second vampire who had recovered and rushed over, and the two ghosts instantly turned into gourds. Roar. 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 The two vampires were entangled, struggling to separate, and roared at the same time, that one of them found out why his companion was screaming at him, and rushed over directly, and then bit him frantically. The later vampire was bewildered, but could only struggle with all his strength, but he didn't have the madness of the one who was pressing on him, so he was caught off guard very quickly, and was bitten on the neck by the other party. Although the teeth of the one biting were broken, he used all his strength to bite off a piece of meat. What? At this moment, there was a shrill scream, but the one who was bitten grabbed the wound and sucked in big mouthfuls. Soon, the bitten one kept twitching, his face became even paler, his skin was old and wrinkled, and then he became cold. Oh, he was originally cold, but he just passed away. Bucky raised his eyebrows. It turns out that vampires can kill vampires directly. You're slow. Of course men have to slow down. I'm not like you. I want to understand our enemies as much as possible, and get used to new fighting methods as much as possible. After Bucky made a vampire into a cyber psychopath, he experimented with the actual effects of the two skills of electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection. Generally speaking, the effect is not bad. Although the system's gun weapons, except for the high explosive sniper rifle, are generally effective against vampires, there are also silver-plated ammunition weapons prepared by Whistler instead. Others, except for the sharp skill, Eye of Judgment, which is basically ineffective against vampires, other quick cracking skills are effective, and the effect of Hellfire Kirin Arm is very good, directly lighting up vampires as fireworks. Bucky, who had tested all the skills against the enemy, finally used the silver-plated bullet to turn the two vampires into embers of fireworks. Only the one who suffered from cyberpsychosis was left. Finally, he stabbed his index finger deeply into his own temple and passed out. He was given an injection of allicin mixed with a small amount of silver nitrate to wake him up from the pain, and died of pain. Then they packed up a group of human gang members controlled by vampires here, and then left the party venue, continued to go deeper, and finally joined the Blade Warrior in a spacious and gorgeously decorated lounge. With Bucky doing it in the front first, it made a group of vampires want to die, and the Blade Fighter then pushed in from the back door, and it went very smoothly. Basically there was no obstacle. Several human gang members were directly knocked down by his super physical fitness, and they would inevitably be sent to the ICU, but they still couldn't die. He killed two more vampires. Now kneeling on the neck of the last vampire here, saying that Bucky was a little slow. The little black brother is pressing down on the middle-aged white man. To Bucky, this scene is somewhat black and humorous, but he doesn't care too much. Live. After all, this living mouth has a bad mouth, and it is hard to breathe, but his mouth is not idle, and he sprays the blade vigorously. It's a pity that there are only a few words that are repeated over and over again, and they don't make much sense. Blade just learned how to kill people. Killing vampires. Interrogation is such a technical skill, he has not yet mastered it. He looked up at Bucky, only to find that Bucky sat in front of the computer desk, pulled out a data cable from his left wrist, and plugged it into an interface of the computer, followed by a bright yellow shimmer in his eyes. This made him curl his lips involuntarily. He didn't know which one was more harmful, vampires or Terminators. Don't worry about the vampire frenzy. The innate net will destroy the world. Bucky felt the critical gaze, so he waved his hand and said, "You feint him first, and then search here to see if there are any suspicious items." Blade nodded, stunned the vampire under his pressure with a needle, and then rummaged around. Bucky also took advantage of copying the data in the only computer here to check the harvest. System information. You teamed up to clear all the vampires in a vampire stronghold, and completed the mission, First Vampire Battle, rewarding 2,000 experience points, Blue Rare Random Item Box 1. As for the reward, it's okay. What's the reward for killing a few vampires, and the daily reward for defeating a gang stronghold? By the way, in total, there are more than 3,000 experience points, a blue box, a green box. The components were opened from the green box, but something interesting was opened from the blue box. System information. Open the rare random item box. Get anti-venom serum, *12. Anti-venom serum, blue and rare. After injection, it can quickly eliminate the germs and viruses invading the body. If it can be directly sprayed on the intrusion site, the healing speed will be accelerated by 33%. This reminded Bucky of the Biochemical 7 he played before time travel, the most fierce protagonist in the Biochemical series in the game, Ethan, the god of hand sanitizer. Think again about the vampire biting his wrist just now. Well, his is a steel unicorn arm. He broke his left hand and never had a chance to get it back. But he still has his right hand, and it doesn't mean that his whole body has been replaced with bionic muscles and bionic blood. With this anti-venom serum, he can also have an extra insurance when he encounters a vampire in the future. After quickly copying the computer data, he followed the Blade Warrior to rummage around, only to find a safe with an electronic combination lock. After Bucky cracked it, he found that there were only ledgers and some cash jewelry in it. Dao Feng looked a little hot-eyed. He was used to living a hard life, and these few years he followed Whistler to pick up junk to support himself. When he first saw this kind of ill-gotten gain, he looked at it with a little helplessness. Bucky. Whoever sees it has a share, but let's leave first, the police are probably coming soon. Dao Feng pursed his lips and nodded, carrying the vampire on his shoulders and leaving first, obviously very happy, fearing that the cruel persona could not be defeated. Bucky also packed a bag, then picked up another vampire, and the two of them exited the back door together, took a circle in the drainpipe, and drove away. The Patriarch, that killer, has made another move. He raided Zeka's field, causing heavy casualties. The half-breeds and Zeeks are all gone. It was still the manor where the vampires met last time, and it was still the real master. He listened to his subordinate's report, his expression gradually turned cold. Snapped. When I heard that the vampires were not transformed through biting, but that the vampires were very rare. Only members of the 12 clans with pure blood had the chance to be born naturally. When I lost contact with them, it was very likely that they were killed. He smashed the wine glass in his hand. Have you not been able to determine the identity of the killer? There's news from the Rodden Kingdom. They haven't heard from the vampire hunters for a long time. They don't think it's from the organization that seems to have lost their inheritance. Is it true that there is a traitor among us? This. Patriarch, I have heard some news, but it has not been confirmed yet. Say. Elder Dragonati bit a person, a young man who always clamored to control human society. He once told people that he once bit a pregnant woman. Huh. Why didn't you say it earlier? That pregnant woman is a mud brother. Where's her child? Did he survive? I just suddenly remembered that there was such a thing. However, Patriarch, I have also heard the legend, if the baby in the womb could survive. The Patriarch gasped, and he also thought of the taboo that could only be born with an extremely small probability that is almost impossible. Possesses the power of vampires, but does not have the weaknesses of vampires, but also has human consciousness. The most powerful rebellion among vampires, the nemesis of vampires, the Daywalker. All of this makes sense. It must be like this. The Elder Ragnati who summoned me, and the bastard he bit. His name is Deacon Frost. Call together, hurry up. The Patriarch's eyes turned blood red, and he, who had been calm all this time, suddenly lost his composure. But if it is really what he guessed, then the situation of the entire vampire group will undergo earth-shaking changes. This is dangerous, but it is also an opportunity, so that vampires no longer need to hide in a dark corner, low-key and peaceful, but like that bastard clamored, it is an opportunity to let the horror legend of vampires spread in the world again. Whistler, Inhibitor. The Blade Warrior still maintains a cool style, but the first thing he said when he returned to the stronghold was to ask Whistler for an inhibitor. He actually stopped on the road and had an injection once. But it seems that human beings are particularly restless during adolescence, and the young Blade Warriors have a particularly strong desire for bloodthirsty. Especially when he saw a lot of blood just now, had a strenuous exercise, and was emotionally agitated, his bloodthirsty desire was even more difficult to restrain. He could actually use the blood of animals to offset part of his bloodthirsty desire, but he insisted in his heart that he never wanted to have any similarities with vampires, and he ate steaks that were well done. Animal blood is equivalent to poor quality food for vampires, while ordinary food is chewing wax, wood residue, and pig feed. Although Blade has a human sense of taste, his insistence on not ingesting blood also caused his development to be slow. Otherwise, his physical fitness will be stronger. But he is like an ascetic who keeps hurting his body. He would rather use intense pain to suppress the bloodthirsty desire than bow to the desire. Bucky really admired him for this. Such willpower is invaluable. The Blade Warrior hid and went to inject inhibitors, while Bucky had a vampire in his left hand and a vampire in his right hand, and was thrown to the ground by two vampires. Whistler stared at the two on the ground, his eyes were about to burst into flames. Due to the injury on his leg, he thought that in this life, he could only hope that the Blade Warrior he trained would kill more vampires and avenge him. But now there was a vampire who was powerless to resist, thrown in front of him. He couldn't help touching the short-barreled double-barreled shotgun on the table. Not busy. Seeing this, Bucky hurriedly stood in front of him, and tried his best to get it back. Not for this old gun to watch the fireworks directly. Coulson, help me. The hairline brother who stayed behind as a liaison officer also kept a cold face. Whistler was killed by a vampire and his wife and children, but he also sacrificed a companion. But he was more restrained, and together with Bucky, tied the two vampires with iron chains. Cough cough cough. Zeeks was woken up by bursts of excruciating pain. The first thing he felt after regaining consciousness was that his mouth was filled with the smell of garlic, which was stinky, spicy, and extremely disgusting. Not only was his mouth full, but his nose was also full. When he coughed, he even choked into his lungs, which made his pale skin instantly flushed red. He couldn't stop struggling, but found that he was tied tightly and couldn't move at all. And he was not the only one who encountered this, there was another one just like him next to him. Those were the human beings he bit and transformed into hybrid vampires, and he actually used these guys as dogs on weekdays. Although he has little power and is even marginalized, he can't enjoy himself in the gathering places of ethnic groups, but he wants to come out to endure hardships and suffer hardships, and take root in the food society. But he is a pure blood after all, and he has his own reserve. Now, the bastard beside him is the only existence that can give him some comfort. His heart was full of horror, and the scenes before he lost consciousness kept flashing in his mind. The thug who made him powerless to resist, let him who had always been high above and despised those self-willed food, fell face down from the cloud into the muddy pond, and held his face tightly, tearing him apart easily, the reserved and self-respecting jerk. Why? Why did such an existence exist? Why did such an encounter fall on his head? Oh, look at you, how can you feed so much? But when he fell into doubts of grief and indignation, a voice he had never heard before, with a joking tone, rang in his ears. He raised his head, and it was an unfamiliar face that he had never seen before, which made his heart instantly filled with aggrieved and angry. This is the smell of food. How dare a food despise and insult him like this? Sorry, my subordinates are not accurate, so it's hard. Come on, drink some water and rinse your mouth. When he saw the handsome food with stubble, he squatted beside him and handed him a glass of water. He wanted to spit on the face of this lowly food, but his lips, mouth, and tongue were still burning hot, and it was difficult to open his mouth. Looking at the water glass handed to his mouth, he just didn't turn his head, he didn't shut up tightly either. However, before he could rinse his mouth, the cool water suddenly turned into strong wine. No, it turned into flames. His mouth, which was already numb from the pain, unexpectedly gave birth to even more intense pain. Puff. He spat out a mouthful of light red blood, and smoke began to smoke around his lips. Oh, isn't this glass of silver nitrate solution not to your liking? Are you a devil? Zix looked at the smiling food in surprise and anger, wishing he could jump over and bite him to death. Did you ask anything? But at this moment, Zix heard another voice, the one he had heard before, which made his hair stand on end. The Blade Warrior recovered and saw Bucky tossing the vampire, but he didn't have that patience. Seeing Bucky shrugging his shoulders, he kicked his face when he went up. And the tyrannical actions of the Blade Warrior were like the last stick that crushed the camel. The big stick made Zinx collapse directly, screaming with snot, tears, and blood. Tell me, what is your status among vampires? Who are your accomplices, and where are they? The shrill screams didn't stop until dawn, but it wasn't that Zeeks and his companions had no strength to howl, but that the Blade Warrior had finally finished asking what he wanted to know. One knife at a time turned the two vampires into. After watching the fireworks, I was completely relieved. The problem is much bigger than we thought. Bucky, Brother Hairline, Blade, and Whistler stood on the ashes all over the ground, all looking solemn. Because they learned from Zeeks and another vampire that vampires have been developing in Detroit for an unknown number of years, and took root here even before World War I. Up to now, vampires have infiltrated various industries in Detroit, including the administrative department, police department, major companies and enterprises, as well as a large number of gangs and gray and black industries. Almost all of them are pure-blooded vampires, leading a few transformed mixed-blood vampires, controlling a few Kazakhs, like a spiderweb, bringing the whole of Detroit under their control. It's just that he doesn't have more detailed information. According to him, it's all in the hands of the elders and patriarchs. He just guards his 1-acre 3-point land, and regularly hand in the proceeds and fresh blood. A worker. He hasn't even been summoned by the patriarch in the past few years, and he doesn't know where the patriarch has settled in the past few years. That's why Dao Feng stabbed him with, "What's the use of leaving you?" But he's not useless, at least he gives Bucky and Blade another target, another pure-blooded vampire he's only recently contacted. Have you started to raise your vigilance? On the roof of a high-rise building near an abandoned factory, in the darkness, Bucky's eyes glowed slightly, and the prosthetic eyes switched between thermal imaging mode and night vision mode. He looked at the figures in the factory area. In addition to humans holding various guns, there were more than a dozen cold-blooded creatures. Obviously, after they took away a stronghold of the vampire, they could ask this question, and it was not difficult for the other party to figure out what information he might reveal if they captured the vampire named Zinx. As for why they had to wait until night to dispatch, instead of striking while the iron was hot and coming during the day. Because even among the vampires, no matter how close they were, they would not tell each other where they hid during the day. That was a secret that only they knew. So the question is, how do they fight? It is impossible to give up, not to mention the vampire's unstoppable blade warrior. Bucky will not retreat in the face of difficulties, even if the other party is alert. This is for them, and he will go to Tiger Mountain. He wanted to get as much internal information about the vampire as possible before the other party was fully prepared, and try to take the initiative. Also, it's not particularly difficult. Vampires are very strong, but they are also extremely fragile, with too many fatal weaknesses. In the game, this is the kind of high-attack crispy skin. No, it is simply a Contra with only one life. Any silver-plated bullet can take the life of a vampire. Except for Eye of Judgment, Bucky, whose other skills can be effective against vampires, as long as he is not suddenly surrounded by 20 or 30 vampires in an empty ground with nowhere to hide. Killing vampires is not much more difficult than killing them. What's more, Bucky has an equally fierce blade warrior beside him. But this time, it wasn't Bucky who was going to the front, and the blade warrior was in the back. As the so-called courteous reciprocity, last time Bucky was a blue-collar support, this time it is the turn of the blade fighter. Boom. Bucky, who was lurking at the back of the factory, just grabbed the spiked wire with his left hand and climbed over the barbed wire fence when he heard the sound of an explosion. He quickly pulled out the suppressed pistol from his waist, and with two soft bangs, the glass windows on the third floor of the factory building were pierced, and bright sparks ignited silently inside. Bucky didn't stop on his feet, and just after shooting, he rushed out and disappeared into the darkness. It's sizzling. Not far away, an electric arc erupted for a moment, and 3 humans with guns fell to the ground instantly. Puff puff. At the same time, a vampire on the roof of the warehouse was shot 3 times in the head, and then lit the fireworks without saying a word. But the gorgeous fireworks in the dark night did not cause more panic. Because the front is already in chaos, there are constant explosions, gunshots, and roars. Bucky was chasing and spanking the humans and vampires running ahead. From the back, the rookie vampire hunter, Blade Warrior, is still a little worse than Bucky, the stealth master. Bucky soon killed the factory. And in front, the blade fighters are also killing and being beaten passively. He still insisted on the principle of not killing people as a last resort, and only stared at the vampire that Bucky pointed out to him. And even though he has a shotgun filled with anti-bomb shells, there are many more human gunners than vampires here. There are more than a dozen vampires, but there are nearly 50 human gunners. He has to deal with vampires who are as fast as ghosts, but also to avoid the chasing and interception of human gunmen. He killed a few vampires, stunned a few gunmen with a bomb, but was gradually surrounded by the gunmen. Zilla. Boom. But at this moment, the gunmen who were pressing him down suddenly burst out with electric arcs, and were surrounded by green mist. A strong explosion occurred among them, and they fell down instantly. Bucky chased a group of people and beat them, and the Blade Warrior taunted and pulled monsters. At this time, he directly cut a wave of leaks. The Blade Warrior also took this opportunity to attack decisively, rushing towards a few vampires, and the hob-light exploded. Random killing. A certain moving picture in memory flashed through Bucky's mind, and his hands were not idle. In less than 3 seconds, the electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection had cooled down, and at the same time as another wave came, the gunmen who had been hit by cyberpsychosis also went berserk. The human gunners lost more than half of them immediately. These were not the Ha Blood clan, but the subordinates of the gang boss of the Ha Blood clan. They didn't have much loyalty, and they scattered like birds and beasts in an instant. And the remaining few vampires are not difficult to solve. Soon, with the desperate howl of the last vampire, Blade thrust the blade into his mouth. Bang. But Bucky shot the vampire in the head and took his head. Bucky had a great time killing, and the harvest experience value is a bit high. The blade warrior didn't care, he just clamped the blade with his arm and put it back into the sheath. The battle on the periphery ended too quickly, and the vampires still took it for granted and underestimated non-human beings too much. They might think that they had overestimated the strength of the blade warrior, but they didn't know that there was a wall hanging beside the blade warrior, and this wall hanging can brush them like cutting leeks. In the factory, there is a very spacious venue, which is used for rave parties on weekdays, attracting those young men and women to come to the carnival, take drugs, and then become a feast for vampires. But now, there's cranky music and no carnival, just a dozen or so vampires at the ready. These dozen or so vampires, different from the vampires in ordinary clothes outside, were all fully armed soldiers, a special force armed with modern equipment and ammunition. Some vampires are self-styled, and naturally some can keep up with the times. These vampires are this group of vampires, specially trained fighters, mercenaries who often participate in battles in Africa and the Middle East, and have rich combat experience. And they are also guarding everywhere, just waiting for the enemy to come in. They don't care how many humans die outside, and it doesn't matter how many hybrid vampires die. They only care about the powerful enemy they saw with their own eyes. Their monitoring system was directly hacked as soon as the battle started, and they didn't even know how to use it to directly make their equipment scrapped. But it didn't matter, because the opponent's actions were too fast, and the battle was resolved quickly beyond their expectations. They just need to know that the enemy is strong enough, stronger than they imagined. And as soon as Bucky entered the factory floor, something felt wrong. It was the oppressive atmosphere, the fighting instinct of having a strong enemy. Puff puff. Sure enough, just when Bucky pushed the blade warrior violently, and he also used the reaction force to move away, the sound of the silenced assault rifle sounded, and sparks splashed from the ground where the two of them were originally located. And Bucky clearly saw that the guy who was hiding in the perfect shooting position and sneaking away ran away at a speed that surpassed that of a human being, so that his 3 shots in a row failed. Let me go. You're a rogue who knows martial arts. The corners of Bucky's mouth curled up slightly, and he's tired of killing ordinary vampires, so that's interesting. As the so-called hooligans know martial arts, no one can stop them. Vampires are very strong. Their physical fitness is far beyond the limit of ordinary people. Except for a few weaknesses, their physique is invincible. For ordinary people, it is indeed an existence that is difficult to match. Especially choosing the right scene, which is conducive to the home of vampires lurking in the dark, there are really not enough people to fill it. But if people who fight vampires are also prepared, such as the Special Forces members of S.H.I.E.L.D., if they have effective protection all over their bodies, use weapons with silver-plated ammunition, and have night vision goggles to assist them, no need to fight. But if vampires are not still living in the last century, they are not supercilious and think that they can defeat all enemies with bare hands only by physical fitness. But also fully armed, arm yourself with modern weapons and equipment, and have rich experience in modern team combat? Then even the blade fighters will be beaten and run around with their heads in their arms. What about Bucky? Bucky is still the same, how to fight, or how to fight. For him, it is still the enemy who is in the dark, or the other party does not understand him even more. Still, the opponent was even more caught off guard, and he locked on the target. An electromagnetic short circuit shocked 2 vampire fighters at once, and then 3 bullets hit one of them in the face, lighting him up with fireworks. But the other person, Bucky's bullet only hit his helmet, failed to kill him, and was overwhelmed by the firepower of other vampire fighters, and had to change positions. But this is just to make Bucky's game experience, from hanging and eating chicken, to king eating chicken, the difficulty has increased slightly, but it has not increased to Hulk's incomprehensible, or he almost stared at him at a glance. Hyun is so perverted. And since Bucky just spends more time, walks around more, and uses more skills, he is still steadily harvesting the heads of vampire fighters one by one. Then the ones shouting perverted can only be those vampire warriors. Bucky took 3 heads in a row, and the opponent found a problem, so he took 2 more heads. The opponent shouted that there was a problem, and continued to take the heads. The opponent had less than 10 fighters left, and started to focus on Bucky. But this freed the blade warriors and began to counterattack, restraining 3 or 4 fighters so that they had to fight the blades. So the vampire warriors lost sight of one another, and after losing another warrior, their morale could not be broken at last. But they were not directly defeated, but they were still well trained and began to retreat. After the 2 heavy firepower were cut off, smoke bombs, shock bombs, and grenades were thrown out all at once, and 2 light machine guns fired rapidly. Get away. These 2 are entrusted to you. Hey, Wong Defa. The blade warrior was so suppressed by the firepower that he couldn't lift his head, but he saw Bucky rushing out. Just as he was about to shout out, he saw that Bucky was directly facing the metal storm, and the bullet hit him, which couldn't even hinder his actions. And Bucky also exploded with a violent speed that the Blade Warrior had never seen before, so that he could hardly catch Bucky's figure. The Blade Warrior's eyes widened in an instant. You dare to say that you are not a Terminator? Of course, the Terminator is not as mentally ill as my future cyber. 17th. If Bucky heard the voice of the Blade Warrior, he would probably respond in this way. But he didn't care about other things at all right now. He activated the explosive gas in super violent dual states, and felt his whole body was on fire. He was so excited. With the metal storm of 2 light machine guns, Bucky leapt 5 or 6 meters high. The metal unicorn arm grabbed the steel fence, and with all his strength, he threw his body like a cannonball, and went out through the window. He adjusted his figure in the air, and he pressed down on the top of a mountain, and pressed down on a vampire warrior below. Yo. This is Johnny. Choo choo choo. The vampire warrior suddenly felt something was wrong, raised his head and raised his gun to shoot. However, she found that the bullet hit the opponent's body, and it could only break the clothes, but no blood could be seen. Shocked, she had no time to dodge, and could only watch a big butt that fell from the sky, getting bigger and bigger until it covered her entire vision. Bucky sat down on the opponent's face, grabbed the ground for her pissed head, and there was no movement after a bang. But Bucky squatted down, kicked his legs, and jumped out suddenly, bursting out with all his strength, and caught up with another vampire who was fleeing fast in his breath. The vampire was startled just now, and ran faster, but heard a scream behind him, and couldn't help turning around, but saw nothing. Although the vampire moves fast, in the eyes of Bucky who perceives acceleration, it is more than a beat slower. He changed his position and walked around to the other side from the other side. A flash of bright silver. The silver-plated tactical knife in Bucky's hand wiped the vampire's neck without hindrance. But he didn't stop, and when the vampire turned into a firework, he had already jumped more than 10 meters away. The rest of the vampires were scared to death, but he couldn't escape Bucky's pursuit at all. One after another, vampires keep turning into fireworks. Boom. After killing the 5th one, the vampire looked desperate, but hit the bottom and exploded, pulling the rings of all the grenades on his body. But it just made Bucky a little more hindered. He hit him in the abdomen with an uppercut, followed by kicking him in the air, and kicked him into the air. The remaining 4 vampires felt grief and indignation when they saw this, but also breathed a sigh of relief, because the unstoppable devil was finally stopped by the explosion. But Bucky couldn't bear it anymore. He was brought back to his senses by the explosion, and when he was in the middle of killing, he forcibly turned off the double berserk state. We all know that when a man is interrupted in the middle of his pleasure and has to hold back, he will go crazy from the bottom of his heart. Bucky now has an urge to explode. But fortunately, he saved most of his chi, otherwise, after exhausting his chi, he would be forced out of the berserk state and directly enter the weak sage time, and then be spotted by the vampire. Gone. However, after such a delay, the last 4 vampires also exerted their breastfeeding strength, and finally distanced themselves from Bucky, ran into a black Mercedes-Benz G, ignited the ignition and stepped on the accelerator, and the wheels spun on the ground. There was thick white smoke, and finally it opened. Bang. But suddenly, there was a sound of a heavy object falling from the roof, causing the car that had just started to shake violently. The 2 vampires in the back seat, seeing that terrifying devil, jumped up, hurriedly raised their guns, and frantically pulled the trigger on the roof of the car. But they were somewhat unexpected. The 2 shuttle bullets were actually dropped by that guy. But in the end, he escaped from danger. Looking at the guy rolling on the ground behind the car, this made the 4 vampires feel like they had survived a catastrophe. The horrible nightmare that they could only flee in panic and helplessness finally woke up. However, the 4 surviving vampires looked at each other, but the same sadness came from it. Is this still the vampire at the top of the food chain, or is it a powerful existence that kills human beings? But they don't know that the so-called escape is just what they think. Bucky, who rolled on the ground and stopped, was not depressed, but his eyes shone slightly, and the corners of his mouth turned up slightly. Outside of downtown Detroit, a quaint and quiet European-style medieval manor. On the outskirts of the manor, at the base of the outermost wall of the garden, several young men with pale complexions were puffing out clouds with grass rolls in their mouths. These young people are not the kind of gothic rock youths who are dressed in fancy clothes. They are all in suits and leather shoes, but they can't hide their vibes, and they still don't fit in with this very stylish manor. These young people also had a leader, who was the one everyone else was facing, with hairsprayed prickly hair, loose tie, unbuttoned neckline, and a rebellious expression. His name is Deacon Frost, and he is a transformed vampire, a servant, bastard, and dog in the eyes of pure-blood vampires. He has been bitter about it. It was an accidental opportunity for him to serve a handsome old man with good taste. At first he thought that the handsome old man just had a bit more taste, but in the end he found out that he became a vampire. Only then did he know that that handsome old man was also an elder in the vampire clan, with a very high status. Promoted from food to eater, he became a higher-level existence in the food chain, and he was loved by the old handsome guy. He originally thought that he would be the existence at the bottom of the chain of contempt among human beings, and become a superior person in one fell swoop. From now on, the master will crawl at his feet and be his dog. Afterwards, he discovered that he was still a dog, the dog in the eyes of those purebred vampires, and he was still a mongrel dog. Even because he was the elder's dog, ordinary vampires would not bully him, but he couldn't bear the look at the dog. He wants to be in the top position, once more. He wants to be an existence that will trample those vampires who despise him under their feet. However, the class within the vampire is solidified. Bastards will never have a chance, and he has no way to work hard at all. He seems to be in a good position, managing several gangs and several venues, but a dog is a dog, and he will always beg for mercy from his master. At most, Dickon Frost can only do what he is doing now. He himself takes in a group of younger brothers, a group of bastards among the bastards, hiding in a place where the pure-blooded vampires can't see, and being his boss for comfort. He didn't want to come here, this pure blood-based camp, but he was summoned here by his master to meet the patriarch, and he was disdainful in his heart, but he wanted to show trepidation to satisfy the bullshit vanity of those pure-blood vampires. Then he was dismissed with a few words, and he couldn't go back to his territory, but was doing odd jobs here. No wonder he was so depressed. But he also had one thing in his heart, that is, the reason why the patriarch summoned him was to ask him about a black girl who bit him for a change of taste more than several years ago, but he remembered it very clearly, because even if there was even with the favor of the elders, he can't transform many vampires, there are only a dozen or so under his command. At that time, he was pissed off by a pure blood who came to check the accounts, knocked a lot of messy things, and was so excited that he bit a random one on the street and had a good time. And if it wasn't for that black girl named Vanessa Brooks, who later transformed into a vampire, and looked for it according to the business card he dropped, he would have forgotten that it happened. But later he recalled that the woman seemed to have a big belly. But he didn't care. Anyway, the woman said she had a miscarriage? Unexpectedly, the patriarch called him here today to ask about that bastard? Then he realized that that bastard was actually the latest vampire killer? Fuck you. You're promising. Deacon Frost vaguely felt that there seemed to be an opportunity, but he couldn't find inspiration and couldn't grasp it, so he was so annoying. But at this moment, his keen sense of hearing caught the sound of the car racing, and not long after, he saw a black Mercedes-Benz Big G, ignoring the half-blood vampire guarding the door, directly crashed into it, and was blown away by that unlucky bastard. The thing hurts its kind. Dickon couldn't help but spit, but he was also curious. This is the pure-blooded special forces team that can't be dragged, and they said they were going to catch that bastard. When they went there were 6 cars, but why did only one come back? Look at the roof, there are many bullet holes. Quinn, go and find out. Me? Let Robert go, I have a stomachache. Quinn is a kind of naive little fat man, but he has a silly face and a heart. He is usually a good brother. He rushes to the front when he takes advantage of it, and hides at the back when there is a problem. Hurry up. Dickon flicked his fingers impatiently, and the straw bounced directly on the little fat man's body, splashing sparks. The little fat man took a slow step and turned his head 3 times, and was kicked by Dickon again before he ran over muttering. But she still sneaked and played tricks, ran to the gate, and made friends with the flying vampire. Dickon had nothing to do with these 2 skinny faces, and was just about to send another one to the past, when his ears moved suddenly, and there was a more irritable roar of the engine. Who is here again? Bang! As Dickon was thinking about it, he saw the light coming from the gate of the manor. Quinn and another vampire were caught off guard by a black Dodge Challenger and flew high. Fake. Dickon almost screamed. He immediately thought of a possibility. The bastard is coming. He was the one who cleaned up the group of special forces with their noses up to the sky, and he chased them all the way to this place. He subconsciously kept backing away, and a few of his subordinates were still yelling, "Wong Defa," and kicked the younger brother in front of him angrily. "Why are you standing still? Run away." Don't look at him screaming wildly in his heart, but he is actually like a bright mirror in his heart. He knows that this is killing many vampires and blowing up the entire group, but he can't even deal with the most powerful team. Became the fierce man of the lost dog. It's not something he can deal with the few pieces of material under his command. Why don't he just run away and wait to turn into fireworks? Grass. The bastard knocked another one into the air, stopped the car, took out the double pipe sprayer, and sprayed out 2 more fireworks with 2 shots. Although Dickon couldn't help flashing a thought in his heart, this bastard was actually his transformation, but only half of it, that in the vampire's concept, this was also his half-child. But seeing that ferocious look, he had no intention of turning this into a large-scale confession scene. Let that bastard go wild, kill more pure-blooded idiots, he won't be with you anymore. But just as Dickon turned to run, he stopped again, turned his head and looked at the main house where the bastard had entered, with a cloudy expression on his face. The old thing was still in the house. It wasn't that Dickon really had any attachment to his master, he wished the old thing was dead. But he died after the old man handed over his power and resources to him. And now. Wait, let's hide from a distance first, take a look at the situation over there, and then make plans. To be on the safe side, it makes sense, then what? Dickon subconsciously thought that his little brother was echoing him, and just wanted to run away with the people, but found that the number of people was wrong. Quinn was still lifting the dead body, but the number was the same as his total number. Fuck, who are you on the horse? Bucky was shot down from the roof of the big black Mercedes-Benz by a round of bullets, fell to the ground and rolled several times, and then lay sprawled on the ground. A pair of prosthetic eyes shimmered, and in the field of vision, on the small map, a flashing red dot was gradually leaving the logo representing himself. He had just installed a GPS positioning device on the car and connected it to his network access cabin, and the signal was directly displayed on the HUD of the prosthetic eye. Then the blade fighters who had packed up the two broken vampires converged and followed them all the way to a manor. Still the same, blade from the front, Bucky sneaking in from the side. This time Bucky couldn't do the back, because the blade warrior saw such a big vampire lair, he couldn't hold back, and couldn't wait for Bucky to make a big circle, so he rushed straight away. Fortunately, the manor is so big, it doesn't matter where you sneak in. So Bucky climbed over the wall not too far from the gate, and happened to meet a group of vampires. He wanted to clean up the group of bastards directly, but suddenly heard one of them muttering, "Wild species," to himself. The word bastard in English can also mean bastard or bastard, but the person who scolded this, the slightly complicated look in the eyes of the blade warrior who was watching the big kill, made Bucky's heart move. Isn't it such a coincidence? So Bucky's heart moved, and he didn't make a move. Instead, he leaned over first, and when the other party said, "Let's see the situation," he replied, "You make sense." Then, in the eyes of a group of people who said, "Who are you?" their eyes shimmered, and an electric arc or green mist flashed across the group of people in an instant. Puff puff. Then he quickly drew the suppressed pistol, firing rapidly in almost one sound. Except for the young man with the hedgehog who scolded the bastard, everyone else lit fireworks. Fake. In the blink of an eye, Dickon saw that all his subordinates, except Quinn's cheeky face, were lit with fireworks. An electric arc flashed across his body, and he was in severe pain, feeling that the world had never been so absurd, even if he woke up overnight and became a vampire. Who are you? Could it be that you were also wild? He looked at the tall and strong black figure wearing goggles and a mask, and his first reaction was that little bitch, Vanessa Brooks, was pregnant with not one but two bastards? I fucked you, Doraemon. Bucky punched the eyes of the shallow-sighted vampire in front of him, and there was an indescribable, eyeball-popping sound. You must know that the soul of Dongguo is very concerned about ethics. When Bucky heard that the bastard dared to scold him like that, he couldn't suppress his anger instantly, and gave the bastard a big punch. I don't care if you are the wild father of the Blade Warrior, let's get on the horse and beat him up first. No. Let me go. It seems that I only have you. You're still riding a horse, aren't you? It doesn't matter if Dickon doesn't beg for mercy, his begging for mercy is nothing but fire. Bucky's eyes widened, he punched his old fist violently, and immediately changed from his right hand to his left. Call. The leather glove on Bucky's left hand was instantly ignited, and the flaming fist the size of a sandbag hit Dickon's bloody face fiercely, instantly turning him into a human-shaped match. Then go from matches to torches. Dickon, whose stinky mouth was smashed, couldn't even utter a scream, and soon became well cooked, then turned into a piece of pitch-black rotten meat, then turned into smoldering charcoal, and finally became a piece of meat. The ashes of the ground, and his men are indistinguishable from each other. Bucky extinguished the flame on his fist, and the anger in his heart also dissipated a lot. He didn't regret it either, he didn't get any news out of the mouth of the suspected half-wild father of Daofeng. Anyway, he had already killed here, and there was no shortage of this one and a half. And although Bucky made a lot of light and shadow special effects, it didn't attract the attention of other vampires, because apart from here, other attentions were focused on the mansion with constant gunshots, explosions and roars. Well, there are still two guys who noticed, that is, the two unlucky ones who were knocked away by the blade at the beginning. But Quinn is a timid and fearful bastard, he will not avenge his boss with righteous indignation, he will just lie on the ground and crash to death, and move to the outside of the manor bit by bit. The other was hit by a car 2 times this time. No matter how stupid you are, you can be clever, and you will imitate it immediately. Bucky didn't notice these two either. There were countless vampires in this manor, and he knew it was impossible to clean it up. After all, he and Blade had limited manpower. So we still focus on the big and let go of the small. Bucky quickly disappeared into the night again, moving quickly in the darkness. It's a pity that there is not even a camera in this manor, and even Bucky suspects that there is no electricity at all. He saw that the lit rooms are all lit candlesticks. It is really an authentic medieval vampire castle. But Bucky is also considered to be a bold man with high skills. After killing so many vampires, he has gradually accumulated confidence. Even if he fails to grasp the situation in the building, he can directly attack. Even if they are surrounded by vampires, the big deal is to summon the steel suit of the system vehicle version and let them eat iron cans. However, when Bucky went around to the side of the building and was about to climb over the wall to enter, he suddenly found that the sound of beating and killing stopped abruptly. Something is wrong. This is very wrong. At least there are more than 100 vampires in this manor, unless they line up to let the Blade Warriors behead one by one, otherwise it is impossible to end the battle so quickly. Did Blade Runner fall into a trap, or did he find something wrong and call it a day? Bucky immediately became more careful, but still jumped in through an open window on the 3rd floor. He left the room quickly, but happened to have a face-to-face with a guy who lost his skin badly. Bucky instantly released the skill, targeting, followed by 3 shots from the silenced pistol in his hand, lighting him up as fireworks. No one around. However, Bucky used targeting to lock on this vampire, but failed to lock on any other targets. That is to say, there are no other vampires within a radius of 20 meters from this vampire? And that was indeed the case. Bucky was vigilant, from the 3rd floor to the top floor, and then turned back, only to see the figure of the vampire. It was the vampires outside the manor who couldn't hear the movement inside the building, so they came in to check the situation. Then the gunshots rang out again, but there were no explosions or screams, only Bucky, the emotionless murderer, harvested the lives of vampires coldly and mercilessly. With a flick of his wrist, Bucky flicked the emptied magazine of bullets in the gun, and quickly added 3 shots in a row, filling the vampire who was kicked into the air by him into fireworks. This is the last vampire to enter the building, not all the ones on the outside, but the vampires who came in, found Bucky, but couldn't stop the ruthless harvest, and the fear of being killed by Bucky alone broke his morale. The birds and beasts are scattered. But Bucky still couldn't find any trace of Blade Runner. Until he found a hidden door in the wine cellar. When he was caught off guard, his head suddenly buzzed. Gloomy. It makes people feel as if they fell asleep and woke up from the cold, the uncomfortable feeling of being cold all over the body. Tinnitus. It was as if he had just come out of a hot concert, and his ears were filled with buzzing sounds. Headache. Feeling hungover, aching in temples and forehead. These feelings, when Bucky discovered the secret door, suddenly added to his body. They were not very strong, but they were unspeakably disgusting. This made Bucky feel a little familiar, reminding him of the cold numbness when he was invaded by black space energy. They are not the same, are very different. The black space energy invades very strongly, whether you can bear it or not, you just force it in. And this one is faint, but it has a feeling of being everywhere, permeating, penetrating from every pore of yours. But that kind of coldness, depression, and interference with thinking made Bucky, who had experienced many supernatural events, immediately associated with dark energy and mental power attacks. This made him can't help complaining secretly. He is obviously on the technology side, and he is taking the black technology route. Why does he always encounter these ghosts and ghosts? And why are these vampires so successful? No longer don't you even need equipment, just naked and reckless. Not only the rogue knows martial arts, but also suddenly plays black magic and dark energy. And the system immediately verified Bucky's guess. System information. You are affected by negative energy, and your body, reaction, and calm attributes are slightly weakened. Fortunately, this impact is not that big. There are some, but it's not so big that Bucky directly loses attribute points. Bucky didn't allow the system to absorb the energy that invaded his body, but first took off the left sleeve of the combat uniform, exposing the steel unicorn arm. Following his thoughts, there seemed to be faint magma flowing inside the unicorn arm, and the surface became densely packed with bone patterns, protruding spikes. Then there was thick smoke, and the entire arm was ablaze. As he breathed, his arms turned slightly dark red, and Bucky felt as if he was being thrown into scalding boiling water, but it was just very comfortable. And that cold feeling was also swept away. As long as it works, Bucky nodded slightly, and retracted the Hellfire enchantment on the unicorn arm, returning to its original form. A cold and uncomfortable feeling immediately followed. The system continues to absorb the alien energy that invaded my body. That feeling disappears as the system absorbs external energy. Bucky pressed his hand on the secret door again, and the lock part flickered in red and blue neon colors, turning into a pile of tatters. He gently opened the secret door, and in a flash, his figure disappeared, like a giant dark giant that had been opened. The mouth devoured the general. Let me go. Is this a Castlevania dug under the manor? Bucky walked in the darkness, and found that the underground space here was extremely spacious, with countless forks, countless rooms, and this was only the first floor, and he also saw the stairs going down. This should be the real lair of vampires, the rest area, and the above are all disguises, for the Harbin blood clan here, and the servants who have been controlled. This underground space is probably even bigger than the underground space of Dr. Zola's castle. And there is no trace of a vampire, obviously the person who caused the trouble is still deeper underground. Moreover, the dark energy here became stronger, making Bucky feel even more uncomfortable. Fortunately, the system absorbed enough energy, and it only returned to normal in an instant. But at the next level, Bucky felt that even the night vision mode of the prosthetic eye would be slightly affected. System prompt. The stored energy value is full, and the absorption of foreign energy will be automatically stopped. However, at this time, the energy that the system could store had reached its maximum value, and it automatically stopped, and the colder and more uncomfortable feeling than before came again for a moment. This energy is absorbed so quickly. For combat needs, Bucky basically dismantles and disassembles before taking action, summoning the system vehicle, and consumes 1/3 of the energy. And this dark energy that is everywhere, affecting him at any time, actually replenished the energy quota in just a few minutes. Then continue to dismantle. Bucky doesn't intend to be a bright fire in this dark environment, so he walked all the way, dismantled all the way, dismantled the door, and dismantled anything in the room casually. And Bucky's dismantling was faster than absorbing energy. At the beginning, he dismantled it with an uncomfortable feeling, but soon he didn't need it. Bucky soon found the entrance to the 3rd underground floor. The 2 vampires who were guarding the entrance sensed Bucky's arrival at the first time. When Bucky was still around the corner, they suddenly acted without warning, rushing towards him like a ghost. As soon as Bucky poked his head, he felt his scalp tingling, and 2 blurred shadows rushed towards him at a speed no less than that of the Blade Warrior. Puff puff. Bucky kept firing the silenced pistol in his hand, but he missed a single shot, not even a stroke, and was dodged by the 2 vampires. The 2 vampires didn't run on the ground, but their powerful bodies made the walls and ceiling their leverage points. They circled around to avoid bullets, and quickly rushed to Bucky. Zilla. Bucky couldn't catch up with the 2 vampires with his shot, but he could keep up with his sight. An electric arc erupted instantly from the 2 vampires, and they were surrounded by green mist at the same time, and their bodies were instantly blocked. And that's enough. Puff puff. Bucky switched the assault rifle on his back and pulled the trigger on the 2 vampires, who were shot. Roar. However, to Bucky's surprise, the silver-plated bullets on the 2 vampires did not turn into fireworks. In other words, they didn't all turn into fireworks, but a piece the size of a fist was scorched where they were shot, but they didn't die directly, but roared, staggered and continued to rush towards Bucky. Grass. You 2 should hang up too. Bucky found that the silver-plated bullets couldn't kill a vampire with a few shots, and he suddenly had the urge to call the police. Fortunately, metallic silver is no longer the Achilles heel of these 2 vampires, but it is still a weakness. In addition, Bucky's quick cracking skills, electromagnetic short circuit, and combined infection continue to take effect, and the actions of the 2 vampires are still greatly affected. Limits. Puff puff. This time Bucky could easily aim at the face and hit the 2 vampires in the head, and finally let the 2 hang on the wall and lie on the ground after each shot twice. Bakyu emptied a round of bullets worryingly, and he was not relieved until the 2 vampires completely turned into fireworks. But he still yelled in his heart that you are perverted, you 2 are just cannon fodder for the gatekeeper. Okay, can you respect your profession and roles? Whether you need to watch the door or not is even more powerful than the 5-fingered Murakami he fought before. Do you take other bosses seriously? Bucky felt that he had already realized the seriousness of the problem, but the reality directly gave him a hard time, and the 2 cannon fodder of the gatekeeper made him break out in a cold sweat. This horse-riding boss can't take off yet. Boss really flew up. Bucky looked at the figure in midair, an old white man in a tuxedo with a slicked back hair, with a face full of shit. He took away the 2 vampires who were guarding the gate, thinking they were guard dogs, but found out that they were 3-headed hellhounds. He himself estimated that it was the one who was shot. He realized the real seriousness of the problem. The vampire here must be holding back a big move, which made him unimaginable. However, the more Bucky gritted his teeth and rushed in. Although he really wanted to turn his head and run away, he knew that now might be his last chance to do something, betting that what this group of vampires did was not successful, and he still had a chance to destroy it. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to imagine what kind of monsters would be born in this battle. According to his experience of traveling here, Hulk came out of Novice Village, followed by Haikong, Ghost Rider and the Master behind him. Even if these vampires made an Akador and a blood frenzy in Detroit, Bucky didn't think it was too surprising. Anyway, when he was a rookie in Zinshu Village, he dared to provoke Hulk, and now he is not lacking in courage, and he has to break into the Dragon's Den and Tiger's Den. Fortunately, he met a few more vampire guards later, but they were no better than the previous two gatekeepers. They were all about the same, so they would still be controlled by Bucky's quick cracking skills, and then it was nothing more than a few more silver-plated bullets. As long as silver is still the weakness of vampires, if you eat a few more shots and still die, it's not a big problem. After killing a few buffed enhanced vampires, Bucky's confidence was a little stronger. The situation remains under control until Bucky comes to the center of the third basement level. A wide hall, surrounded by 12 humanoid statues, and a huge empty space in the middle. At this time, the ground was covered with mysterious inscriptions with a dark and thick liquid, spreading around like a spiderweb. A circle composed of ghostly symbols with a radius of more than 10 meters, with a hexagonal star on the outside, forming a huge pattern. And on the pattern, the ground is full of vampires kneeling, raising their hands high, facing up to the sky, shaking their bodies, then clapping their hands on the ground, kneeling with their foreheads on the ground, and so on. This scene was enough to make Bucky's scalp tingle. But in the center of the pattern, there is a blade warrior lying on the ground. He has been stripped naked, only his four-legged trousers are left, and ghost symbols are densely drawn on his chest, which are integrated with the pattern on the ground, and his hands and feet are still covered. The thick iron nails were nailed to the ground, and blood was constantly oozing out. Sitting on him is a woman who is also of African descent, and her body is also densely painted with ghost symbols, which are integrated with his ghost symbols. 1. It wasn't even the blade fighter that surprised Bucky the most. Of course it was the old white man floating in the sky covered in black air that made Bucky scream. This horse is making wool. Mada didn't know that after the founding of the country. Oh, this is a ghost-eating lotus country, so it's okay. You are a fine person, eat me with a high-explosive sniper bomb. Seeing a group of vampires concentrating on jumping, Bucky took out an anti-material high-explosive sniper rifle without saying a word, locked on the floating one, and shot it right away. Not only that, all of Bucky's existing attack methods, arm missiles, and quick cracking skills, including the Eye of Judgment, which is useless against vampires but can interfere with it at least, were all thrown away. Except cyber psychopathy. Because the closest to the floating boss is the Blade Warrior and the woman on him. The woman doesn't know him, but the Blade Warrior is also a teammate who has formed several teams, so he can't be the first to kill him. Bucky made a decision in an instant, without hesitation, and without stopping. After throwing away the systematic attack methods, he still had the anti-vampire weapon prepared by Whistler. He quickly took off the strap of the grenade on his shoulder, pulled all the tabs, and threw it into the air. He followed but didn't pull out his gun. Instead, the red and blue neon blocks flickered behind him, and he summoned his system vehicle version, the munitions version of the steel battlesuit. It's sizzling, and at this moment, the floating one suddenly trembled all over his body. Electric arcs and green mist suddenly burst out all over his body. The same is true for those closest to him around him, including the Blade Warrior. And all the vampires here suddenly trembled. Bucky found that the faint black air flowing around them suddenly froze. What? All the vampires, except Blade, let out a shrill, annoyed scream that made Bucky grin. Boom. At this time, the grenade exploded when it hit the roof more than 10 meters high, and strands of silver and white powder flew and scattered. That silver powder and dried allicin powder, roar. The floating one let out a roar. Black energy erupted all over his body, and he ignored the effects of electromagnetic short circuit and contagion, followed by targeting Bucky, the culprit who ruined their good deeds, and flew over like a big bird. He flies very fast, like a swooping bird, but that's all. It's much slower than a falcon flying wing, not to mention a steel suit that can soar to Mach 1.5. This also gave Bucky plenty of time to get on the steel battlesuit vehicle, raised his thick arms, and opened them both, one revealing a circle of grenades, and the other revealing 3 mini-missiles. But he didn't lock onto the flying one, but hit the ground. Boom boom boom. 3 missiles and 8 rifle grenades hit the ground, and there was a roar that shook the ground. One of the rifle grenades hit the blade not too far away. The strong shock wave directly tore the iron nails off his hands and feet, and he flew out with the woman. Boom. And at this time, the one who flew over also slammed hard, directly hitting a shallow dent in the steel suit weighing several tons, and the thick protective armor on the front chest, and the whole suit flew away like a cannonball. Go out. This is not over. The flying one was also stopped by the huge reaction force, stopped in place, still floating with both feet off the ground, followed by pushing forward with both hands, a black air rushed straight towards the steel battleclothes. Bucky in the steel suit suddenly felt his vision go black, and the electronic eyes of the suit were covered by black air. Coldness, headache, tinnitus. Bucky's brain buzzed as if a shock bomb had exploded in his ears. The steel suit hit a statue and was interrupted by the statue in the middle, but was pulled by the black air and flew back again. However, during the flight, suddenly the red and blue neon color blocks flickered, and then disappeared, revealing Bucky inside. Bucky was instantly swallowed by black air. This made the boss show a violent and bloodthirsty grin. But the smile suddenly froze. The moment Bucky was swallowed by the black air, his left arm was released into the true form of Hellfire enchantment. Dense bone patterns, covered with sharp spikes, billowing smoke and raging flames. The surrounding black air is like ordinary water vapor, which disappears without a trace when it encounters flames. So the floating boss saw a flaming fist, which was constantly zooming in his field of vision. What? Perhaps he hadn't fought with anyone for too long, and he didn't have the ability to adapt to the situation at all, so he was confused by this sudden change. In an expert duel, just a moment of hesitation is a weight that affects the balance of victory and defeat, not to mention that he is still a little at a loss. But even if he was at a loss, he still reacted instinctively. He subconsciously mobilized the black energy and gathered it in front of him. There was even a sharp burst of screaming, which actually roared out circles of billowing air. The ghost told you to make a comparison. Even if Bucky closed the auditory nerve of the prosthetic ear immediately, he was still grinning from the noise. Moreover, the flame damage of his Hellfire enchantment is exactly the nemesis of this kind of black energy, but the roar of the guy in front of him and the explosive impact force made him stand still. Don't forget, he didn't run, but took off his steel suit, and was pulled and flew over with his feet not touching the ground. He had nowhere to use his strength. He could only watch helplessly as the opponent was close at hand, but he wiped the flames from his fist and escaped dangerously. Psychosis. The Blade Warrior was blown away, and the boss was pulled over by Bucky again, and the distance was wide enough. Bucky not only came back with a skill triple, but also threw out the cyberpsychosis that was left behind just now. Then back away, because the other vampires here also reacted and rushed over angrily. Cough cough cough. However, this group of vampires was about to rush over, trying to throw Bucky to the ground, but suddenly coughed. Then the coughs continued one after another. All of them were covering their throats, with snot and tears streaming down their faces. Some vampires even coughed up sparks. The Allison powder and silver powder exploded by the previous grenades are flying and scattered, and they are now in effect. Even the super brave and perverted boss coughed twice before the black air erupted around him, preventing the powder from getting close. Thanks to the physique of vampires who are afraid of silver, even if they are so perverted, they should still be afraid. Bucky's eyes flashed coldly. He will kill you while you are sick. Instead of holding a gun, he picked up the silver-plated tactical knife with his right hand, bursting with gas and super rage, and turned it on. In an instant, Bucky felt that all the movements around him were slowing down, turning into a slow motion that slowed down by 1/3, and a hot breath filled his whole body, and a violent anger aimed at the one who refused to move. Obediently go to hell, bastard. After the double rage, Bucky had 39 physical bodies and 40 reactions, more than 6 times and nearly 7 times the limit of human physique. Suddenly his figure blurred, and he jumped more than 10 meters in the blink of an eye. Moreover, the powerful power and control erupted, and after several twists and turns, even the vampires felt dazzled, and Bucky passed through 5 vampires. 5 vampire heads soared into the sky. The head with its bloody mouth wide open and its 4 sharp canine teeth just showed a shocked and inexplicable expression, before it ignited spontaneously without wind, turning into fireworks in the air. And Bucky also rushed in front of the floating boss, leapt forward, like a horse stepping on a flying swallow, punched the boss hard with his left fist. What? This boss may really have never experienced such a dangerous fight in his life, and was once again confused by the sudden situation, and although he reacted a little faster this time, Bucky was even more violent this time. He only had time to put his hands in front of his chest, but Bucky's ferocious force hit his palm hard and hit his chest again, causing him to cry out in pain and fly out fiercely. His hands twisted unnaturally, and when flames ignited, they instantly turned into charcoal-grilled chicken feet. But he didn't turn into a human-shaped torch like the previous vampires did. Instead, he let out a cry of pain. A large amount of black energy gushed out from his body, and quickly rushed towards his hands. Although he was consumed by the flames, he quickly extinguished the flames. Damn. Boss stopped in the air, looked at his twisted and scorched claws, tears glistened in his eyes, and cried out in pain. But seeing that Bucky was still frantically harvesting the lives of his people and lighting up fireworks, he didn't care too much. He let out an angry howl, and then roared out circles of sound waves, followed by a pair of charcoal-grilled chicken feet. With a sudden wave, raging black air gushed out. The black air was like a billowing wave, but instead of spraying it on Bucky, it sprayed on the ground and spread rapidly. The vampires around him suddenly screamed, their eyes glowed scarlet, and they no longer felt the pain of inhaling silver powder and allicin powder, and the speed of rushing towards Bucky accelerated again. And the speed of Bucky's violent charge was also hindered by the spreading sound waves. Bucky only felt that someone was scratching the glass with their fingernails, and there were 2 pieces of foam rubbing against his ears crazily. The auditory nerve of the prosthetic ear was useless. And there was a buzzing sound in my mind, and countless messy thoughts emerged. Not good. Bucky looked at the negative effect of alien mental power invasion displayed in the system, and secretly yelled, "Oops," quickly let the system absorb it, and at the same time decisively exit the super berserk state, only retaining the explosive bonus of 3 body, 3 reaction, and 3 calmness. The super violent -10-point calming attribute has too much influence on willpower. When the enemy has mental attack means, Bucky has to give up the super violent body and reaction bonus. And at this time, the vampires who were even faster rushed over. But Bucky didn't panic at all, his eyes lit up, and the quick cracking skills came out again. But this time Bucky didn't charge forward again, but retreated quickly opening the distance. Because now the electromagnetic short circuit, joint infection, and sonic shock can only hit 13 targets, but the vampires rushed over 17 or 8 at once. He is a little weak after exiting the super berserk, and needs to take a breath. The enemy didn't give Bucky any respite. What? However, just when the 7 or 8 figures were about to rush towards Bucky, there was a hysterical scream, and the boss floating in the sky suddenly gushed out billowing black air, and crazily rushed towards the vampire closest to him. Boss grabbed the vampire's head with one hand, and his neck with the other. With a bite, he bit off a piece of meat, and the red blood in the black sprayed several meters high. He bit off half of the vampire's neck with 3 consecutive bites, and with a flick of his hands, he rushed to the next one. At the same time, all the vampires here trembled like when Bucky used the Eye of Judgment on the boss before, and their figures froze for a moment. Roar. And at this moment, an incomparably majestic roar was heard from the position where the Blade Warrior was blown away, like the roar of a raging wild beast. What did I do wrong? Why do I always have to encounter such sloppy things? Is it because my time travel posture is wrong? Bucky's eyes shimmered, and he released an electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection to the surrounding vampires. Taking advantage of the moment they paused, he punched left and right, and quickly cleaned up the 8 vampires. Even if these vampires ate the increase of the boss's dark fury, and absorbed the black energy, their stature speed would be greatly accelerated, and their resistance to silverware would also be greatly increased. But there is still no direct immunity, and the silverware can still cause great damage to it. If the silverware pierces the head, it will fall to the ground even if it is not dead. Not to mention that they are completely immune to the burning damage of the infernal enchantment. After finishing off these vampires, Bucky withdrew quickly and distanced himself from the other vampires. Yep, no other vampires are chasing Bucky anymore because they can't care less. Just when the psychosis skill that Bucky threw to the boss before took effect, all the vampires trembled, and then their scarlet eyes radiated intense anger. Not only the boss crazily wore the vampire and devoured it raw, but the other vampires also rushed towards the boss, frantically strangling together. The effect is so good. Bucky blinked, a little confused, but after thinking about it, he guessed, is it because of the magic circle with ghostly symbols? The boss's mental power is so strong, is it because he connected the spiritual power of all the vampires here through the magic circle? That's good. Bucky doesn't need to worry about the problem of not having enough skills to lock in enough people. If they directly link together spiritually, they will spread to each other. However, before Bucky breathed a sigh of relief and watched the excitement, he discovered another problem. The boss became stronger as he killed him. It was a good thing for the boss to kill the vampires when he saw them, but Bucky found that after he gnawed a few vampires, he was faster, stronger, and had more black energy on his body. This is not killing, this is devouring. The vampire took the initiative to help Bucky spread his skills, but Bucky also took the initiative to help the vampire raise a boss? The clown is me. Bucky was stunned for a moment, quickly glared at the boss, and released the quick cracking skill, causing electric arcs and green mist to erupt on him, interrupting his actions. Then he rushed forward again. Even if the boss was surrounded by vampires, he couldn't rush through, and he didn't dare to fill in, but he still wanted to hunt and kill as many vampires as possible, weakening and interfering with the boss as much as possible. Roar. But just as Bucky charged upwards, baring his teeth and grinning, there was another ferocious roar in the distance, like a lion roaring. Then Bucky saw a blade warrior wearing boxer shorts, with ghostly symbols on his body, blood on his hands and feet, and red blood on his mouth and chin. He was also like a boss, with one hand grab the head of a vampire, drag him in front of him, take a big bite, and bite off half of his neck. Fuck, brother, why are you joining in the fun? When Bucky looked at it, he wanted to cover his face. Isn't it enough that the boss is crazy, and his teammates are also crazy? It doesn't matter if you are crazy. The Blade Warrior made a big move, one vampire at a time, and every time he eats a vampire, he becomes stronger by 1 point. But the question is he still Bucky's teammate? One crazy boss is enough for Bucky, but two are too much for him. But there is no way. Bucky can only bite the bullet and continue to rush, continue to kill vampires, and try to speed up, kill as many as possible, and weaken these two crazy bosses. Vampire. What did we do wrong again? You three bastards will have a competition to kill the fastest. Not to mention Bucky's wanting to cry without tears, and the inexplicable grief and indignation of the vampires. The crazy boss soon got together with the bloodthirsty Blade Warrior. These two guys, as if they were the closest to each other before, as if they only had each other in their eyes, the blade was aiming at the boss, and the boss locked on him the moment the blade moved. The two crazy guys quickly killed the vampires between them, and fought together. They all now have the strength and explosive power that is no less than that of Bucky after he opened the dual state. Seeing the two crazy beasts fighting with their sharp claws and teeth in the most primitive way, Bucky always felt that this scene seemed familiar, as if he had seen the huge green monster in the scene of Crazy PK with the flame skull. This world is too scary. If there is a disagreement, two monsters will be thrown in front of you to PK, and you will not be able to avoid it even if you want to. The angry Bucky quickly killed two more vampires to vent his inexplicable grief and anger. And when Bucky threw an electromagnetic short circuit to the boss, and an electric arc erupted on the Blade Warrior beside him almost at the same time. Bucky felt a chill in his heart for a moment. As expected, love will disappear, brothers will leave you, and teammates will turn black into bosses. He slaughtered a few more vampires, then got away. Because at this time, ordinary vampires seem to have recovered from the state of madness, and the influence of cyberpsychosis on them is not as strong as that of bosses. Only the boss and the blade are still fighting passionately, doing the most primitive hand-to-hand combat. But it was such a moment that Bucky saw a clue. He found that with the berserk of the boss, the black air around him boiled up everywhere, but now he was not so violent. And now that the black air is getting stronger and stronger, it also made Bucky notice that the black air operates regularly. Every vampire has black energy on his body, which is connected to the magic circle on the ground, and the gathering point of the black energy is the boss, but it is also the blade. To be precise, it gathers towards the boss through the blade. But after the Blade Warrior got out of the shackles, the woman on him who was covered in ghostly symbols disappeared, and there seemed to be something wrong with the magic circle, which allowed the Blade Warrior to gather black energy and fight the boss, 50-50. So the key is this magic circle. Bucky thought about it, and the red and blue neon blocks flickered behind him, summoning the steel suit again. Boom boom boom. The arms, shoulders, chest, abdomen, and thighs of the steel battlesuit opened the hidden compartments one by one, revealing the weapons inside, such as grenades, missiles, and machine guns, all of which were fully fired in an instant. In an instant, guns and guns blared, metal storms and explosions crazily hit the ground. If there is a problem, of course it needs to be dealt with. Bucky is aiming at the ghost symbols on the ground. The ground was battered and pitted, and ghost symbols were also destroyed. Very good. Bucky's eyes lit up. He thought the magic circle should have some protection, but it didn't have any. The black air was visibly confused. However, this did not make the situation better. Not only the boss and the Blade Warrior are still fighting frantically without distraction. What's more, the vampire who had regained his sanity was filled with black energy, his muscles were knotted, his eyes were glowing red, and he was all berserk again. And this time they only have one goal, and that is Bucky, the only living person here. I'm not your dad. Bucky wants to cry again but has no tears. Is it too late to replace my brain with a prosthetic body? Bucky's shoulder was pierced by a violent vampire's fangs, blood spattered instantly. Die. However, his eyes burst into an extremely crazy look, and his left hand grabbed them one by one, directly smashing the vampire's face. Then, he grabbed the neck of the vampire who had been lit as a torch, and used it as a humanoid weapon for him. He ruthlessly swung the other two vampires flying, and kicked another one away. But more vampires rushed up. System, inject anti-venom serum. System information. Injected, and the special virus that invaded the cells is being cleared. Bucky, who turned on the dual states of explosion and super rage again, has no fear, only a look of rage in his eyes, and barely maintains his sanity, using an anti-venom serum to clear the infection of the vampire virus. Then rushed up again. The first time the vampires rushed up, he took the steel suit back into the system. The ignition time of the steel suit was too long, and the speed of the vampire was too fast. Can't kill it. Instead of that, why not? Anyway, although the vampires are berserk, they are not as strong as the boss and the Blade Warrior who only see each other in their eyes. Bucky, who is still in a berserk state, his body strength has increased sharply, and there is still time to slow down the effect, will end with one knife. But there are just too many vampires. Before being massacred by Bucky, and then by the boss and the Blade Warrior, more than half of the more than 100 vampires here have been lost, but there are still 60 or 70. In order not to be dumped by the raging vampire, Bucky can only fight and retreat, beat and run. Even so, it is inevitable to be approached by a vampire and be bitten unexpectedly. Fortunately, Bucky was extremely brave and frenziedly fighting, but still failed to form an encirclement circle of vampires, and still led a group of vampires to fight and run. But with the passage of time, Bucky's gas value is rapidly consumed, and he is about to be exhausted, and he is forced to leave the dual state. This forced Bucky to restrain his desire to fight, and suddenly threw out the few remaining grenades, added a missile to his right arm, and hit the ground not far away, blowing himself and a few vampires away. Only then did he distance himself from all the vampires. And just when the remaining 40 or so vampires were about to pounce again, the red and blue neon blocks behind Bucky flickered, and the steel suit was summoned again. It's sizzling. The fastest vampire rushed to the front of Bucky, who had got into the steel suit, and handed over his claws, but suddenly an electric arc erupted on his body, and was kicked back by Bucky, just in time for the second lunge. On the vampire who came over. Bucky also successfully closed the chest of the steel suit and started the ignition. A group of vampires jumped on the steel battlesuit, jingling and clanging. But the steel suit is an iron can with a defense comparable to that of a tank, and no vampire can chew it no matter how violent it is. It was just thrown to the ground by the steel suit, and then flew out close to the ground. Bucky didn't care about 21, he gritted his teeth and let the steel suit go full speed, running around in a crooked manner. He didn't ask for anything else, just a chance to catch his breath. It's sizzling. During the breath, Bucky's skills were cooled down, and the vampires on the steel suits, electric arcs or green mist erupted, and were thrown away by the suits like dumplings. Boom. And Bucky couldn't grasp it for a while. The steel suit was like a monkey jumping, and he hit the wall with his head, and his whole head was smashed into the solid stone wall. Even though there was a lot of commotion, the vampires didn't lose any staff, and more than vampires rushed up. However, he was fully fired by the iron battlesuit, spattering the flesh and blood of these vampires. The biggest advantage of the system vehicle version of the steel suit is that it can be summoned at any time. The energy is produced by the system, and so is the ammunition. And Bucky disassembled everything when he had nothing to do, and there were already thousands of ordinary and green high-quality components. If you keep fighting like this, Bucky won't even feel sorry for this group of vampires. But this is not the solution. Vampires with black air protection, unless they are particularly unlucky, are shot into the body by a grenade or missile, and are blown to pieces. Otherwise, even if they are bloody, they can quickly recover. Fortunately, this is also Bucky's plan to delay the attack. He just has to wait for his breath to be full. Just when the vampires were about to rush to the steel suit against the hail of bullets, they found that the iron can that made them extremely irritable but unable to chew had suddenly disappeared. Reappearance of the rampaging god of fire with a burning left arm. First release the quick cracking skill, and then turn on the berserk. Bucky's figure was blurred, and suddenly he jumped repeatedly among a group of vampires. In a daze, 5 heads flew into the sky, and 3 vampires were set ablaze. The killing storm is on again. Finally, after paying the price of being caught with blood grooves all over his body and being bitten by a vampire on his waist, Bucky stabbed the last vampire's eyes with 2 sharp fingers on his left hand until penetrating into the brain, let him scream, turned into a torch, and then turned into fireworks. Huh. I made a asterisk, and I'm finally done. Bucky turned on berserk repeatedly, consuming a lot of energy, and energy can be replenished, but his physical strength is not enough. At this time, it was as if he had fought Hill for 3 days and 3 nights, and then immediately went to run 3 marathons. His iron body couldn't help the feeling of soreness all over his body, and he sat down on the ground directly, wishing he could go straight back. Sleeping on a horse with a big head, love whoever you want. So when the boss and the Blade Warrior were still fighting, he just walked back and closed his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, a system sleep came, which consumed system energy, went to the deepest sleep, and recovered his strength. Bucky opened his eyes. He was out of breath immediately. His neck was no longer thick, His veins were no longer bursting, he was full of energy, extremely hungry, and his abdomen was rumbling. The physical strength recovered, the wound healed, but the nutrients stored in the body were consumed in large quantities. Bucky felt so hungry that he could swallow a cow raw, but he could only take out an energy bar pad, and another system food, synthetic meat steak, that he had drawn before, to barely deal with it. I put my attention on the boss and the Blade Warrior. The two persons were still fighting in the most primitive and craziest way. They were covered in wounds, oozing black and red viscous blood, and there were even signs of biting each other. Only the two of them. It seems that because of the black energy attached to the attack, the wounds showed no signs of healing, but they plundered each other's black energy. In Bucky's eyes, the black energy lingering over the two of them was chaotic and violent, attacking each other and merging with each other. Fortunately, there is no sign of continuing to grow, although it is much richer than before. Because those vampires that Bucky killed, the black energy that was not burned clean by his hellfire enchantment, all gathered on these two guys. If there were bystanders watching everything, Bucky's fight would actually serve as a backdrop, because these two were the pair that is getting more and more crazy. Bucky couldn't wait any longer. The two monsters, Blade Warrior and Boss, were fighting each other heartily and passionately. Suddenly, an electric arc and green mist erupted from their bodies, and they both felt a thunder explode in their ears. And at the moment when they stagnated, a figure with flames rushed over at a speed no less than theirs. Boom. Boom. Bucky turned on the dual state again, and everything in his eyes was slowing down, but he found that the movements of the Boss and the Blade Warrior were still extremely fast, which showed that all the vampires here were killed, and neither of the two monsters raised was better than Bucky's. Poor physical fitness after turning on Berserk. So he gritted his teeth and rushed over. Without hesitation, a monster punched him. I'm a little sorry, but the current Blade Warrior is no longer a teammate fighting side by side with him, but a target judged by the system to be in a hostile state. But the reality is also like this. Bucky punched the Boss to the ground, and the second punch hit the Blade Warrior, but he subconsciously counterattacked and kicked up. Bucky slapped him and missed him. Okay, what? Then came the Boss's cry of pain, and the Blade Warrior's muffled groan. Fortunately, the burning attack of Bucky's Hellfire enchantment is as powerful as ever. Although he failed to light the human-shaped torches on the two monsters, it made them consume a lot of black energy, and they were stuck on their flesh like maggots attached to the bones. Come on, put out the flame that scorched a piece of flesh. Then the two were angry and violent, and attacked Bucky together. Bucky pushed with his right hand, which landed on the Blade Warrior's knee, and punched the Boss with his left fist. The huge force made him fly backwards. The Blade Warrior didn't identify with Bucky. Although the effect of the cyberpsychosis still has ended, he and the Boss are still going to die. He took advantage of the situation and elbowed the Boss, who was screaming again. Grass. After being knocked into the air, Bucky rolled and landed firmly. He cursed the two perverts secretly, but he had no choice but to charge up again. Because only his flame can consume the black energy most quickly and weaken these two monsters. So another big monster fuck that made Bucky bite the bullet began. It's just that this time, it's not Ghost Rider and Little Green who are persevering and being sent flying by Lou Fat again and again, but Bucky being repulsed by two monsters again and again. But Bucky did this on purpose. He never loves to fight, and he doesn't want to fight bad battles with two monsters. Anyway, the effect of his flame attack was good enough. Whenever the two monsters were touched by the flame, it would take a lot of black energy to suppress them. Repeated several times, the Boss received 7 or 8 punches, while the Blade Warrior had more combat skills and experience, and only received 5 or 6 punches, which already made the two monsters extremely uncomfortable, and the black energy on their bodies became obviously weaker. This even made the two monsters only pay 40 to 50% of their attention to each other, and put more attention on defending Bucky. Fortunately, these two monsters are really immortal, and they must eat each other alive to be reconciled. As long as Bucky maintains his strategy of taking advantage and running away, even when his energy is about to be exhausted and he runs away like a jerk, the two monsters just ignore him and continue to fight like crazy. Bucky breathed a sigh of relief, continued to move forward, punched the two monsters separately, and took a few hits. He was also given a splitting headache by the screams of the two monsters. Yes, if you don't maintain the high cold character design, you will talk about it. But it also caused the black energy of the two monsters to be further consumed, and because of the gap in fighting awareness between the two sides, the two of them fought each other in a crazy and primitive hand-to-hand fight. When they beat Bucky, the blade had an instinctive reaction, and the Boss always took 2 more shots. Fist, the blade is less likely to be hit twice. And Bucky was about to run out of energy again, and when he flew back quickly, the balance of victory and defeat finally tilted to one side. It was originally a Boss with more black energy, and even more powerful after being blessed by the black energy. At this time, the black energy on his body was obviously much less than that of the Blade Warrior, and his speed and strength were weakened more than that of the Blade Warrior, gradually tending to be inferior. Until the Blade Warrior suddenly exploded, he slapped his hands away, grabbed his shoulders, bumped his knees several times in turn, curled up his beaten body, followed by a flying leap, concentrated the strength and weight of his whole body, and flew up the elbow, hit him hard on the back of the head. The boss grabbed the ground fiercely with his face, but he also reacted, turned over suddenly, thrust his arms suddenly, 10 sharp nails, pierced fiercely into the ribs of the Blade Warrior who flew towards him. The Blade Warrior did not show any weakness either, he punched the boss's old face. The two of them were like two wolves, rolling on the ground, wrestling and biting nonstop. But in the end, it was the Blade Warrior who was more fierce, and finally locked the boss violently, controlled his limbs with both arms and legs, and bit his neck fiercely. Roar. The boss's scream finally turned into pain and panic. Roar. But soon, before the Blade Warrior could say a few words, he let out an angry roar following Yongtian. Because a burst of electric arc and green mist suddenly erupted from his body, which made him extremely uncomfortable, and interrupted his actions of talking about the old white man. Bang. However, as soon as he turned his head, he saw a burning flame, billowing thick smoke, and a metal fist full of spikes, which continued to enlarge in his sight, followed by a pain on his face, and his whole body flew up. Bucky punched his former teammate hard, and said sorry again in his heart, but there is no way, who told you to betray the organization, and now you are already hostile. Bucky can't make the Blade Warrior who is now the boss stronger. But his top priority is still the vampire boss. The Blade Warrior flew away, but the boss still couldn't get rid of the fate of being locked up by a strongman. Instead, Bucky turned over, rode on him, and raised a steel fist the size of a sandbag. And Bucky's fist is much harder than Blade Warrior's. Boss was already blown away by the Blade Warrior's mouthful of black energy, but now he was punched a few more times, and even more black air was scattered by the flames, and he was instantly sluggish. Boom. At this time, the Blade Warrior also endured all kinds of discomfort, and rushed over with a roar, but was blown away by a missile from Bucky's right arm again. Then Bucky continued to beat the boss crazily. Boss had no power to resist at this time, and there was almost no black air around his body. Bucky punched and punched his entire head into charcoal. Finally, Bucky felt that the struggle under him stopped abruptly, and his pressed body completely went limp. Bucky stopped his fists and saw that the boss finally tilted his neck and fell silent. However, at this time, the Blade Warrior rushed over again endlessly, and this time he was extremely annoyed, obviously very dissatisfied with Bucky for taking the head. Bucky's nose is crooked when he sees it. Are you still dissatisfied? I stepped on the horse and formed a good team. If the pig teammates said they would defect, and they would directly turn into a boss. Who should I ask for reason? Bucky got up abruptly, smirked at Blade Warrior, and wanted to go over to Hai Bian and let him down, but suddenly, the boss, who had already been beaten violently by Bucky, lying on the ground without any movement, without the protection of black energy on his body, was finally ignited by the burning damage of Bucky's Hellfire enchantment, and began to burn like smoldering charcoal, turn into gorgeous fireworks. But at this moment, the body of the boss suddenly exploded with a bang, bursting into flying sparks, and then turning into flying ashes. And at this moment, a drop of ink suddenly appeared at the original position of the boss, suspended in midair. In an instant, Bucky felt as if he was in the snow and ice of Siberia. The bone-chilling cold wrapped his whole body. There were also countless shrill ghost screams, which exploded in my ears. At this moment, the drop of ink that seemed to contain endless evil suddenly exploded, turning into boundless black air, instantly filling the entire space. At this moment, Bucky felt that time and space were stagnant, and his thinking was frozen. A panic about the unknown could not help rising from the bottom of his heart. In the dark, in this endless darkness, in this endless silence, there seemed to be a mysterious existence that sensed him and wanted to contact him. Unlike the big guy who gave Bucky a black face at a glance last time, this inexplicable existence didn't seem to be hostile. He just opened his arms and wanted to embrace Bucky. However, that was the case, that kind of deep and quiet, but there seemed to be countless murmurs, telling endless mysteries and unknowns. Bucky felt great terror. You can't go, you can't see, you can't hear. If you witness that inexplicable existence, something terrible will happen. It will be the truth that will shock his three views. In an instant, such a clear realization was born in Bucky's heart. With the strongest willpower that he had never experienced in his life, he restrained the urge to respond to the call of that existence, and quickly called the system. If energy and spiritual power invaded, absorb it quickly. But at this moment, Bucky felt suddenly relaxed again. From his body to his consciousness, the horrible feeling of being enveloped by the boundless silence and darkness was gone, as if it was just a blink of an eye, and everything was a dream. Roar. However, the blade warrior not far away let out a deafening roar that made the air and the ground tremble. The original ghostly symbols on his body turned into simple but more mysterious patterns, and his body full of scars also returned to smooth skin. This almost made Bucky almost lose hold, and after a long time of trouble, the final boss, the ultimate form, were all former pig teammates? The first time I met you, I should have punched you to death. But after all, there is no place to buy regret medicine. Bucky can only face such a blade warrior, but he only feels dazzled, and the opponent's figure suddenly disappears. Bucky, who felt extremely dangerous in an instant, directly activated the explosive and super violent dual states. The effect of slowing down time by 30% allowed Bucky to see that the blade warrior, baring his canine teeth, had rushed to him and punched him. But the opponent's speed is still too fast, he can see it, but his body can't react. Fortunately, the quick deciphering skill does not require a body, only Bucky stares. Bang. It's sizzling. However, the blade warrior was still half a beat quicker, and the fist first hit Bucky's left arm, which was barely parrying, before an electric arc erupted from his body. Bucky felt a huge force coming, and his whole body flew up. But with this punch, the blade fighter's fist was scorched black and bloody. But there was a flash of black energy on him, he recovered in the blink of an eye, and rushed forward again. Crackling. The blade warrior rushed over and gave Bucky a heavy blow, leaving Bucky with no power to fight back but to parry. Bucky felt bitter in his heart, he hadn't killed the bastard a long time ago. But what worries him more is that he has turned on the dual state. At his strongest moment, he can only parry. These 10 seconds have passed, what should he do? He is obviously a teammate, so why did he become a boss? Still so perverted, it's not human. Not human? A thought suddenly flashed in Bucky's mind, only half of the bastard in front of him is not human. In an instant, he punched the blade warrior stiffly, and felt that 3 ribs were broken at once, but he didn't fly out. Instead, his left arm tightly clamped the blade's arm, and he roared, "Look straight at me, you bastard." Bucky's eyes lit up, and he hit him with the eye of judgment. He was betting that the blade warrior hadn't really been completely blackened into a boss, he was just suppressed by human consciousness, but not obliterated. And it worked. The moment the skill took effect, the blade warrior suddenly froze for a moment, and then stopped, not caring that Bucky was holding his arm tightly with his left hand, and the flames made him sizzling, and he just stood there in a daze, in place. Only then did Bucky breathe a sigh of relief, and touched the blood at the corner of his mouth with his right hand, but he didn't let go of his left hand, and continued to consume the black energy gushing out of the blade warrior. No. The blade warrior didn't notice it either. He just stood there, but suddenly his whole body trembled, and his legs went limp, and he fell to his knees, letting out a roar of inexplicable grief and indignation, unbearable pain, and anguish. He seemed to have been greatly condemned in his heart, and he was enduring indescribable torment. He screamed, and 2 lines of blood and tears were left in his eyes. Isn't it? Another cry. This effect was beyond Bucky's expectation, and he almost couldn't help letting go of the blade warrior's arm when he saw this situation. But no, the black energy on his body has not dissipated completely, it is still extremely turbulent. And not only that, Bucky also took out a shot of anti-venom serum from the system space, pierced it on the blade warrior's neck, and detoxified him, who was carrying half of the vampire virus. Ow. It doesn't matter, the effect is better than Allison mixed with silver nitrate. The blade warrior who is tearing his heart and lungs is screaming in pain. Bucky flew away. Bucky became a rolling gourd again, but he wasn't annoyed, and didn't scold his teammate anymore, because he hit a few buffer rolls, and when he stood up, he found that the blade warrior was still rolling on the ground, in excruciating pain, and all over his body. The black air overflowed violently. This made Bucky slap his head, but he didn't think of mutual generation and mutual restraint before, just like the holy light treatment in the game, which can cause damage to undead creatures and can expel Bucky from the vampire virus. Of course it can cause harm to vampires. I suddenly realized just now that this application really has an immediate effect. Seeing that the black energy from Blade Warrior's body dissipated, but still unwilling to reconcile, he still wanted to get back into his body, Bucky hurried over again, and pressed his left hand on Blade Warrior's body. But all of a sudden, the black air met the extremely harmful flames, but this time it went crazy, launched a crazy impact, and even wrapped Bucky in an instant. System information. Warning. Spot the intruder. An unknown being tried to directly contact the system, and the system activated the automatic defense and counterattack mode. The moment the black air rushed over, Bucky fell into darkness. The quiet, deep, and boundless darkness seems to contain countless information, whispering everywhere, like a lover's whisper, speaking in a low voice, not knowing what it means, so I can't help but want to listen carefully and get the meaning of it. True. However, just when the darkness shielded Bucky's 5 senses, making him only feel the existence of darkness, he couldn't help but want to embrace the darkness and blend into it. Suddenly, in front of Bucky's eyes, countless red and blue neon color blocks flickered, and the ear-piercing siren sounded, and the unchanging cold electronic sound of the system seemed to be tinged with anger. This also allowed Bucky to escape from that state in an instant, from the darkness, and return to reality. However, only the red and blue neon blocks flashed in his eyes, and all the functions of the system were shut down. He had only one response to the system's call: the system is mobilizing all resources to deal with special intrusions. On the contrary, Bucky calmed down. This proves the strength of that inexplicable existence, and doesn't it also prove that the system that is fighting back is as powerful as ever? Although he didn't know which big boss he had offended again, last time he stared at Ahayan, this time he couldn't help being played with, but fortunately the system can give him the bottom line. Be it Hei Kong or the Lord of Hell, either way, this time, the system can cover him. And soon, Bucky seemed to hear a soft sigh in his ear, which seemed to be a touch of regret, but he still left quietly, and then the feeling of being shrouded in quiet darkness disappeared completely, like the wind blowing. Clouds scattered. Bucky felt very confused. When the black air was on the vampire, it was either berserk or screaming like a ghost. How did it come to him so gentle? Although it is very strong, it doesn't matter whether Bucky is willing or not, he will go directly. But it seems that there is no hostility, just want to tell the truth to Bucky? What is real is not always beautiful, but most of the time, it is unacceptably cruel and terrifying. A thought suddenly appeared in Bucky's mind. No matter how kind he was, he said something like, "Your wife is so fun, this is also unacceptable." System information. The unknown interference problem with the system has been dealt with. The system is self-checking and restarting. The red and blue neon blocks in front of Bucky disappeared, but he fell directly into the darkness, and then the restart progress bar appeared again in his vision, which made him grin wryly. It was enough to toss. The system restarted several times up. Soon, after reading the article, the system went online again, and he also recovered his vision. Looking around, there was ashes all over the place. Only the Blade Warrior was still crying bitterly, beating his head with his hands for a while, twitching his mouth for a while. The black hair on his body, the chi is gone at all, and the mysterious pattern on his body has also disappeared. Bucky thought that you didn't do anything. Are you crying like this? Didn't he just become a pig teammate once, fell into the hands of a vampire, and almost killed his brother? Well, seeing Dao Feng like this, he felt a little more comfortable, but from Dao Feng's point of view, he really couldn't do it, right? It's not like digging a hole to bury him. System information. Trigger a special task, find the root cause. You need to find out why and what kind of behavior the vampire did, which led to the occurrence of this incident, and completely destroy its source. This task is marked as currently unique, and no other tasks can be completed before completing the task. But this time without Bucky actively communicating with the system also popped up a striking task reminder directly in his field of vision. This is very angry. Fortunately, he didn't vent his anger on him, which is very reasonable. But no matter what the vampire got, mysterious items or some demon notes, there will be this mysterious magic circle, this mysterious ceremony, and this will be the case for Blade and Bucky. Bucky had to be ruined by that thing. However, the system is not a strong man to lock the man. It asked Bucky to search the manor. He didn't even know if it was hidden by a vampire elsewhere. The system has already found out where the source is, and it has been marked on the small map of the HUD. After reading the mission information, Bucky found that the blade stopped tossing and howling, and knelt on the ground with his head down, silent and speechless, as if his whole body was burnt out. "Hey, buddy, are you awake?" The Blade Warrior was silent for a long time before he stood up silently. With endless sadness and self-blame in his eyes, he turned his head and glanced. Bucky was taken aback for a moment, and then thought, that was the place where he was blown away by himself before, and then he ran away with blood on his mouth. That blood belonged to that female vampire before? Let's go, I've had enough. The Blade Warrior seemed to just want to escape from this place, but his legs gave way and he staggered when he wanted to leave directly. I feel that I am much weaker. I remember. What method did you use to make me suddenly regain consciousness and suddenly fall into that state, and then you gave me another injection? Well, as a little trick of mine, I also prepared a shot of a mixture of concentrated allicin and silver nitrate. Bucky saw that Blade Warrior's eyes were still red, his canine teeth were still there, and the burnt part of his arm was also healing rapidly. Obviously, the injection of anti-venom didn't fundamentally eliminate his vampire genes, but only affected him, caused damage. And obviously, his body is stronger than before, and he is a little taller, so the influence of the black energy on him still remains. Bucky didn't tell the truth, so he asked himself for anti-venom serum. There are still countless vampires in this world. Bucky and the world both need a daywalker to continue to deal with vampire-related incidents. Thanks. Blade Warrior was a bit unaccustomed to it, but he thanked him sincerely. Although he has been unconscious and unable to control himself, he also has memories of this period of time. From breaking into the underground space and seeing that strange yet familiar face, that was the moment he was born. Because of his extremely special situation, a face was imprinted in his mind. He felt the connection and call of the blood, and lost his mind for a moment, which caused him to be plotted against, captured by the vampire, who brought him here, nailed him to the ground, and performed that evil ritual. If it wasn't for Bucky being strong enough to penetrate and destroy, the Blade Warrior would not dare to imagine what kind of existence the vampire patriarch who presided over the evil ceremony would become in the end, and the world would be like this because of his weakness and mistakes and what to suffer. You have suffered too much, so don't think too much, but before we leave, let's go to a place first. What is this, or Devil City, the underground space of the vampire manor? Bucky was a little wobbly when walking with him, but he still insisted on not needing support, and he walked more and more steadily. The Blade Warrior who gradually regained his strength followed the systematic path and came to the upper floor. A medieval European black magician, astrologer, black witches and the like exist and use the room. It is full of props that are not serious at first sight. Skulls engraved with 6-pointed stars, weird insects, reptiles, mollusks soaked in bottles and jars, daggers covered with black blood scabs. There is also a large book on the table in the middle of the room. The cover of this book is also black and red, like the color of the blood of those vampires before, and it is crumpled and messy, looking like wrinkled finger pads. It doesn't look like a diary used by serious people, it must be recording some ulterior and evil secrets. You're looking for this thing. Although Blade Warrior was asking questions, there were not many questions in his tone, but he stared at this strange book, his expression dazed for a while. I seem to have seen this book. Impossible, how could I have seen it? He was so weird now, how could he have such an inexplicable sense of familiarity with something that he definitely had no impression of, something he had never seen before? But Bucky guessed that the Blade Warrior must have also been affected by the real master of the black energy, the thing summoned by that evil ritual. He himself was only affected by the black energy for a while, and he was affected so much, how could it be possible that the Blade Warrior was not affected at all? But if that existence is also staring at the Blade Runner like Bucky, how can he still maintain his consciousness so clearly? It suddenly occurred to Bucky that the big boss who didn't know who he was before didn't seem to be entirely his fault. Maybe he was curious about the system from the beginning, rather than him as a time traveler? This made Bucky feel a lot calmer. Thinking about it this way, he would blame the system for being a troublemaker. Now the task reward should be better, otherwise how can he make up for his wounded heart? I feel similar to you, so obviously, this is indeed what we are looking for, the root of this incident. Open to take a look. Of course, the Blade Warrior can't wait to tear this thing up, but he is also really curious. He is the age with the most vigorous curiosity. He is commonly known as a dead young man. He really wants to know what the vampire got. Come up with that unbelievable thing? Bucky is also really curious, but he doesn't want to die. Well, he has done it before. He knows how terrifying that mysterious existence is. It is the master who forced the system to restart. He doesn't want to open the book, just fell into it with one glance. Although this book is only strange in appearance, there is no black air scattered, faint screams or something, but knowledge itself contains inexplicable power, and some words are taboo in themselves. Bucky felt that it was enough to make a big death today, and there was no need to do it again. So he picked up the book and communicated with the system under the curious eyes of the Blade Warrior. You are this. The Blade Warrior didn't wait for Bucky to open the book, only to see a sudden flash of red and blue neon blocks of strange shades on the book. Snort. Then, in Bucky's mind, a cold snort suddenly sounded inexplicably, like the kind of extremely disdainful contempt for people who don't know what to do, which caused the system to alarm frantically. This frightened Bucky into a cold sweat, thinking that there would be trouble again. But after all, it was a false alarm, just for a moment, and then it was gone. So the Blade Warrior saw sweat dripping from Bucky's brow inexplicably, with a look of fear on his face, but the book in his hand was turned into tatters. It was originally a skin-like book cover, which had dried and cracked, and the paper inside was also yellowed and broken, and scraps of paper fell off. Bucky threw the torn book back on the table, and the Blade Warrior went to open it even more curiously. The pages of the book were old and damaged, and the writing and pictures on it were seriously faded, and not a single letter could be read. You are. The safest way to deal with it is that no matter what was recorded in this book before, or any peculiarities, it is gone now. All right. The Blade Warrior nodded, thinking that this kind of result is acceptable. As for Bucky's method, who hasn't kept a secret, so it doesn't matter if you don't want to talk about it. In fact, Bucky was just a little tired. After tossing and tossing for a long time, he just wanted a bottle of cold beer and collapsed on the sofa. The Blade wanted to stay away from here, so why didn't Bucky want to finish work early? System information. The special task, finding the root cause, is completed, and the follow-up task, getting to the root, is triggered. It is necessary to find out the real source of the vampire incident. But Bucky glanced at the system task list, so he didn't fall flat. Why don't you accept it as soon as you see it? It's finally over, and it's not over. Do you have to mess with that horrible existence that restarted the system? But fortunately, this is not the only mandatory task. The task list has been unlocked. Just put it there and pretend not to see it. But things don't end there. Just when Bucky and Blade Warrior were about to leave, sparks suddenly burst out in the void in front of them. The Blade Warrior was stunned for a moment, and then put on a defensive posture. Unfortunately, he didn't even find suitable clothes along the way, he just wrapped himself in a sheet. At this moment, he picked up a skull casually, which looked somewhat funny. But Bucky grinned, and there was only one thought in his mind. Why are you late again? Sure enough, the sparks formed a circle of fire, and the scene inside suddenly changed. A young fat man Bucky knew very well jumped out of the circle of fire with a serious face. Fatty Wong glared at the Blade Warrior, and the Blade Warrior glared at him. Neither of them was used to talking first, so it was exhausting. Old Wong, are we destined so soon? Bucky burst into laughter, and greeted him slightly teasingly. Mr. Lind. You recognize? Yeah, I've seen it before, let me introduce you. Bucky introduces the two of them, and they stare again, only this time the Blade stares critically. In the past, if someone told him about a magician, he would scoff at it. Although he himself was a half-vampire, the folklore of vampires was somewhat different from fantasy stories. But now that vampires know all about black magic, it's reasonable to have a magician, but Blade is like asking this little fat man, why the hell did you go there so long ago, you didn't show up until you finished fighting? This time, not only does the Blade Warrior think this way, but Bucky also wants to ask, is it true that even if it is a magician, as long as it is an official organization, it is habitual to be late? Hold on. Fatty Wong took his time and started drawing Xiaoyuan to cast spells again. Kamatage detected the abnormal magic disturbance at the first time, but according to the intensity of the disturbance, we must make corresponding preparations, but this time the disturbance time is not long, and it will end soon, so I was sent to check out the situation. Fatty Wong routinely used a lot of light and shadow special effects, gaudy magic energy, and built a magic circle, which only he himself understood for a long time. A magic circle was also photographed on the Blade Warrior, causing him to almost make a move. Finally, he came to the result of the investigation that only he himself knew, and he didn't say anything at all. Then he nodded coldly, and was about to draw Xiaoyuan and leave in a circle of fire. Bucky was so angry that he wanted to slap him on the back of the head, so he quickly stopped this guy. Although in the final analysis, this matter has nothing to do with Fatty Wong or Kamatage. It was all caused by vampires. People really come and leave whenever they want, and vampires have opinions if they have opinions. But Bucky said in his heart that the two of us can be regarded as acquaintances once and acquaintances twice, right? Want to leave without saying a word? Anyway, this problem was solved by the two of us. It's not too much to give an explanation, right? Let me tell you why you came late again. The Blade Warrior also nodded. It was indeed he and Bucky who worked together to solve it. Well, he was responsible for creating difficulties, and Bucky was responsible for solving them. That's why Fatty Wong was silent for a moment, and then he said the rhetoric. Then did you find anything? The energy of dark magic has disappeared, and there is only some residual power, which is not enough to affect reality. The source of black magic has also been destroyed by you. Fatty Wong pointed to the torn book that Bucky dismantled, and he looked at Bucky with doubts, but he is a person who abides by his duty. He is only here to complete the task, and other problems will be suppressed. In the heart. How did vampires get this black magic? Do you know its source? Bucky's heart moved, although he didn't really want to complete the follow-up task, but there was someone ready to ask, so he couldn't help but want to ask. The Blade Warrior also asked, you said you are an organization that protects the Earth from supernatural events. You already know the existence of vampires, right? Why don't you go and eliminate them? Asked here, Dao Feng was still a little angry. Fatty Wang's usual stuck frame. Bucky doesn't know whether this guy is distracted or thinking about something. But soon he said, why do you think vampires have been hiding in the world and dormant in a low-key way? What restricts them and prevents them from appearing in human society? You know, every time there is a war, there are vampires. Harvest Carnival. Why didn't there be any legends about vampires in World War I or World War E? Because of you. You just need to know that Taj has made countless efforts and unimaginable sacrifices in order to maintain the safety of the Earth. You must know that the earlier vampires are not just the current ones that are stronger and faster. Degree. According to what Fatty Wong said, the vampire is so low-key and he doesn't dare to take the lead in making troubles, as Taj a credit. Suddenly, a picture appeared in Bucky's mind, a certain bald-headed lady in disguise, calmly waving a sandalwood fan, waving his hand, and the vampires filled with black air were wiped out. Then let's talk about the black magic. According to what you said, it wasn't developed by the vampires themselves, right? The Blade Warrior wanted to ask more questions, but Bucky said that each person asked a question, and it was his turn. This is indeed secretly researched by vampires. When Fatty Wong opened his mouth, Bucky frowned. He felt that this little fatty was somewhat meaningless, and wanted to fool himself, but he continued to say. But they are based on the taboo knowledge of a very ancient, extremely dark and extremely evil existence, but it has been passed down through many generations and many existences, has been changed a lot, and there are many deviations in understanding. Came out, but the root cause. Fatty Wong said this with a secretive expression on his face. Your approach is right. Completely destroying that book is a taboo that must not be passed on. If you read it, you will have problems. Bucky's heart trembled. Looking at Fatty Wong like this, he probably didn't run away. He must have messed with the dark book that created the world's first vampire. Under Bucky's questioning, Fatty Wong also explained the magic circle, saying that it gathered dark energy and summoned evil existences in the dark to purify the blood of vampires and unlock other magic circles. The code on the gene allows it to go back to its origin and become a truly powerful vampire. The current vampires, the so-called pure blood, have actually deteriorated more than once, and they are not as good as before. And here we need to use the legends of vampires, gaining the power of vampires, but without the weaknesses of vampires, half vampires who still maintain human nature, the legendary Daywalker, using the blood of vampires, but not vampires, break through the limitations and purify and complete the vampire's genes. That's why Fatty Wong used magic to check the Blade Warrior, because there was something wrong with him. His vampire blood was purified because of the magic circle, and he even suppressed his human blood, but it was later suppressed by something, changed back. He thought that the magic circle had been destroyed, and something unexpected happened, so Bucky didn't mention the anti-venom serum. After explaining the matter, Fatty Wong wanted to draw Xiaoyuan to leave again. Let's go. Now that the vampires are making trouble, don't you care? We will continue to closely monitor the vampires' movements. In terms of secular affairs, I will trouble the two of you to continue to contribute. Old Wong, ask me, does Taj still recruit apprentices? He doesn't want to make more money, he just wants to learn a craft. Bucky said that I also really want to rely on the boss and drink with him calmly. Lao Wong, I want to be a magician. We will meet again by fate, too, farewell. Bucky sighed, and could only watch Fatty Wong fill the cup and leave. He was just a little angry. He was exhausted, but Fatty Wong filled the cup with him, but in fact he was relieved. At least this shows that Big Boss doesn't think vampires are enough of a problem yet. And the boss doesn't think there is anything wrong with him interfering in this vampire incident, interfering with the timeline, pushing the future into darkness or something. But he didn't know that he and the Blade Warrior also left the room. After leaving the manor, the mirrors suddenly shattered in that room, and a calm, bald man dressed as a woman came out. Chi was gathered into a ball, held in the hands of the boss, trembling. And in the unknown place, surrounded by pure dark power, the owner of the voice that was still cupping Bucky and dismissing it before, also trembled. It's so dangerous, but fortunately, Uncle Quinn is smart enough. At the gate of the manor, Quinn, the half-blood vampire Chubby, was patted on his chest, looking at the taillights of the car that disappeared into the distance, with a look of fear for the rest of his life. Just now, he had a companion, the unlucky gatekeeper who was hit twice by a car, once more than him. And these two guys who were lying at the door pretending to be dead, heard that there was no movement in the manor, and the muffled noise that seemed to be coming from the ground disappeared, and the manor was completely quiet. The two waited for a while, looked at each other, just about to get up. The little fat Quinn was more clever, or more timid. He vaguely felt that something was wrong, but pretended to be loyal and said to the other unlucky guy, he went first look at the situation, you lie on your stomach and don't move. Then he disappeared into the darkness with a whoosh. Fatty Quinn is not strong and fast, and he is considered trash among mixed-race vampires, but he has a characteristic, he has a low sense of presence, and it is difficult to be found when he wants to hide. So just when the unlucky guy was surprised for a while, and then got up in a daze. The black Dodge Challenger that rushed into the manor suddenly turned on its headlights and rushed towards it. The unlucky guy who didn't react was knocked into the air for the third time, and this time, he was still in the air and got hit. The sprayer turned into a firework. This world is too dangerous. The little fatty, who was still in shock, was also a little worried at this time. His boss Dickon had died long ago, but the pervert who made his boss feel cold had just walked away, wanting to come to his boss's boss, and all the other people in this manor boss. The ending is not very good. In the end, he had the courage to sneak into the house carefully, and found that there was no one inside. But he didn't know that this was the time when a certain bald-headed woman in disguise opened the portal and left with a small cloud of black air. He didn't know that just now, besides him, the last half-blood vampire in this manor died, and another ray of black energy was born, and then disappeared. Little Fatty Quinn followed around in the house, but somehow found the entrance to the underground space, and then deducted a very old page from the third floor at the deepest level, between the hidden compartments of a certain room. The parchment with some indistinct cursive writing on it, carefully carried it in his bosom. Then he came back to his senses and slapped his forehead. What is he doing? There's no one here, so get something valuable first. Not long after, the little fat man appeared at the gate of the house, with several jewelry necklaces around his neck, a bulging bag behind his back, a cigar in his mouth, a bottle of red wine in his hand, and a smug expression on his face. He didn't dare to go back to the urban area. Fortunately, his boss Dickon also has a stronghold in the suburbs. There are still a few obedient Kazakhs there. He plans to go there first to avoid the limelight. And at this time, on the other side, Bucky, who was driving a silver-gray Ford Mustang and followed the car of the Blade Warrior, finally took a break to look at the results of this operation. System information. You cooperated with the Blade Warrior to kill the Patriarch and all the elders of the Detroit vampire clan, and eliminated a large number of vampires. You have completed the mission, Blade Warrior, Origin. You have found the source of this vampire ritual, a dark Bible of vampires, and destroyed it. You have completed the task, find the source. You found more information about the source. You triggered the special task, Vampire. Origin. You triggered the special task, Black Magic. Origin. You need to find more relevant information. You have obtained 6,500 experience points, Orange Legendary Random Item Box 1, Purple Epic Random Item Box 1, Blue Rare Random Item Box 3. Your experience value has reached the upgrade standard and has now been upgraded to level 11. Character. James Buchanan Barnes. Level 11. Experience points. 5,360 11 thousandths. Free attribute point plus 1. Freedom feat points plus 1. Complete the task, orange boxes, purple boxes, massive experience points, upgrades. Browsing through the messages, Bucky's exhaustion was swept away. There are companies that don't start well, don't focus on going public to cut leaks, become gods, and live a boring and unpretentious boring life, but work hard and desperately to do tasks. Isn't it just for this? The ever-increasing sense of fulfillment, satisfaction, and security made Bucky work hard. Bucky took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, allowing the corners of his mouth to curl upwards. Finally, he grinned silently for a while, and swayed vigorously with the irritable rock music for a while before stopping. However, he didn't open the box immediately. Last time, he didn't pay much attention to the sense of ceremony, so he opened a cheating big steel cannon, so this time he upgraded it first. And the meaning of adding points this time is also unusual, because Bucky can give the intelligence attribute points to 16 points, and can unlock the purple epic level quick crack plugin production specification. System. Add intelligence to attribute points, then add specialties collective weakness, resistance, collective weakness, quick crack, and unlock the specialty, Hacker Master. System information. Points added completed, basic properties. Body 16, plus 8, movement 10, destruction 7, fighting 9. Reaction 17, plus 9, pistol 8, assault 10, sword 7. Technology 4, engineering 4, craft 4, intelligence 16, invasion protocol 9, quick crack 9. Calmness 19, plus 8, stealth 11, cold-blooded 8, health, 360 360ths, plus 80. Chi value. 230 230ths, plus 40, memory, 23 23rds, added expertise. Collective weakness. Upload the hacking program, Golem. Collective weakness, to all hostile targets within the range, reducing their physical resistance by 15%, lasting 120 seconds, and occupying 3 RAM. Resistance, reduce the target's non-physical resistance by an additional 30%, 1 RAM. Quick crack, make the target suffer an additional 30% quick crack damage, 1 RAM. Hacker Masters unlocks crafting specifications for epic quick hacks. And Bucky disassembled some electronic components whenever he was free, and had already saved enough quick crack components. After the upgrade, he gave the 3 plugins of electromagnetic short circuit, joint infection, and sonic shock and upgraded them to epic level. The skill speed bar and cooling time are shorter, the damage is higher, and the effect is longer lasting. In addition, Bucky spent 3 points of reserved expertise and clicked the Upload Golem expertise, which is to upload a hacking program, similar to giving debuff on the enemy, reducing defense and resistance. This greatly alleviated the problem of Bucky's insufficient damage to resistant bosses and insufficient skill effects. If you encounter Black Sky Possessed, Ghost Knights, and stronger blade fighters, such targets with extremely high magic resistance, Bucky's quick cracking skills will not be so weak. Just make the opponent feel uncomfortable and it's over. But it will make him really feel the pain. System: make a quick crack plugin, Synaptic Meltdown, upgrade to epic level and install it in the network access warehouse. System information: Synaptic Fuse has been upgraded and installed. Synaptic Meltdown, purple epic, lethal fast cracking skill, causing stroke-like effect on the target, mild paralysis, impaired vision and hearing, and loss of balance. Damage to mechanical targets is halved. 259 DPS, consumes 5 RAM, uploads 4 seconds, lasts for 5 seconds, and cools down for 10 seconds. And Bucky also added a new damage skill, Synapse Fusing, to fill the empty skill slot, and added a powerful damage magic. In the future, if he encounters a pervert like a vampire boss again, Bucky will have him to look at. After the Blade Warrior went back, no one paid any attention to him, and locked himself in the small black room, shutting himself up. The veteran Whistler just stared, blaming Bucky for failing to take good care of his son. Protect the calf. This reaction couldn't be more normal. But Bucky, who is so angry when he mentions the pig teammate of Blade Warrior, is not used to this old canon. After drinking a bottle of cold beer, he collapsed on the sofa and turned into a salted fish. He ignored him at all, which made Huis Lamos Mose. It's not that he hasn't had a fight with Bucky before, but what kind of mouth is Bucky talking about? It was the nephew Tony, one of Marvel's famous mouthpieces, with a venomous tongue. Just a few words can make this old gun's blood pressure soar, but he can only look like he wants to kill him with a shot. But looked helpless. After a few times of confrontation, he also has a long memory. But he couldn't hold back his face, so he could only spin around the room angrily. Agent Coulson, still a good guy, came over with a smile to smooth things over. With the sentence, "You've worked hard, you've suffered a lot, right?" And another bottle of cold beer was handed over, and Bucky felt happy in his heart. This is the treatment you deserve when you come back from hard work. Being tricked by pig teammates, bullied by the boss behind the boss, what is he trying to do? Just come back and someone will point to his nose and pick him, right? But Bucky didn't care too much about Whistler, and ignored him. Instead, he talked to Brother Hairline, and he pretended not to hear when he asked, which made the old gun have blue veins on his forehead. But anyway, he swallowed his anger and listened to what happened. But Bucky naturally hid the part about Fatty Wong, and Daofeng also agreed to keep it secret. As for whether he would tell Whistler, Bucky didn't say anything anyway. Only then did Whistler realize that Bucky was so angry about Mao, seeing that his nose was not his nose, and his eyes were not his eyes. But he wasn't in the mood to discuss right or wrong, his attention was all on what happened to his son. Although at the beginning, Whistler trained the Blade Warrior and only used him as a weapon of revenge, but after getting along for a long time and growing in love with each other, he gradually accepted the Blade Warrior and regarded him as his own son. After listening to Bucky's narration, he also guessed some facts. With a gloomy face, he left without saying a word, went to the place where the blade closed itself, and sat down outside the door, worrying with his son. I can't understand this world more and more. And Brother Hairline, after listening to the vampire's lair, black magic, and the evil blood sacrifice ceremony of vampires, he also looked like Hill, who was knocked out by Bucky's big news one after another, with a look on his face that I don't understand. The world is changing so fast. Bucky just patted him on the shoulder as a comfort. He is not worried about the collapse of the 3 views of the Hairline brothers. This is more acceptable than Hill. He gets along well with a group of superheroes, superpowers, and gods, and even affects them in turn. Marvel's best supporting role. Sir, if, as you said, a large number of vampires are wiped out by you and the Blade Warrior, then I think this is an opportunity. Sure enough, Brother Hairline quickly calmed down and thought of the next plan. This is the best time for us to clean up the city. In his opinion, vampires are a problem that Bucky and Blade Warrior need to deal with. What he has to consider is that the vampires control so many blood clans, thus controlling the serious problems in Detroit. It is an urgent task to thoroughly investigate how many Kazakhs there are and to formulate countermeasures. Of course, there is a question of priority. The root cause of the problem, the vampire, must be solved first, and then the related Kazakhs can be dealt with. This order cannot be wrong. But now Bucky directly killed the patriarch of the Detroit vampires, and directly cut off the roots of his clan. It should be that no pure blood survived, and many mixed blood miscellaneous fish were also wiped out. Now that the Ha blood group has no master and no one who gives orders, they don't know what to do. Isn't it the best time to wipe them all out? And Bucky doesn't need to worry about this. The vampires control Detroit, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has power all over the country. He and the Hairline brothers will naturally contact Howard, and then deploy people, and then find a reason to attack Detroit. One sweep. But it's not like Bucky has nothing to do. As I said before, there are still a lot of mixed-race vampires who slipped through the net. We can't let those bastards block them. And it just happened to take this opportunity to cure Blade Warrior's autism. Bucky didn't mean that the Blade fighter was hypocritical, and being a pig teammate was more depressed than him who was cheated by a pig teammate. He understood, but he didn't want to persuade, comfort, give him more time or something. If there is anything he can't think about, it's because he thinks about it, so he can think wildly, so he can find something to do, and he doesn't have time to think about it. As for the others, he is a pig teammate, so he doesn't want Bucky to worry so much about him. If there is an old gun who takes him as his pawn, Bucky won't be unpopular if he worries about this. So he didn't care about Lao Pao sitting there, brewing feelings with a straw in his mouth, and was about to have a wave of sensationalism, so he went over and pulled him aside. Then ignore his glare and his stinking mouth. Boom. Bucky kicked the locked door open, startled, and almost let Lao Pao be swallowed by the grass roll. Bucky didn't go in either, he just stood at the door and raised his voice and said, "Blade, have you rested enough? When you have enough rest, come out quickly, and there is work to do. Don't pay attention to me." But after waiting for a long time, there was a mournful sound from inside. This has really hit to the point of doubting life. Okay. Bucky nodded and turned to leave. Then, under the disdainful eyes of the old cannon whistler who said, "Just here," he came back with an Allison tear gas bomb. "Fack. You little bastard." As soon as Lao Pao wanted to stop it, he found out with a horrified expression that Bucky pulled the tab and threw the tear gas into the room, and hurried over with one leg dragging. "Fox Squid. Why can't you stay away from me?" The Blade Runner also quickly ran out of the room, rushing towards Bucky angrily. "Because the evil fire in my heart is not smaller than yours." Bucky's mouth twitched, and he directly turned towards him. When the two disagreed, they started fighting. People, hiding in the corner and complaining about themselves. After all, it is better to have a goal that can vent the depression. Fake squid vomit. Kong Muang. Although Bucky took the initiative to find fault, but when he saw the Blade Warrior fighting with him, and remembered that this guy was a pig teammate before, he didn't get angry at all, and the two became angry when they fought. But like a child fighting, Sha Ji, who has no rules, does not win or lose, but only to use up the last bit of strength. Have you vented enough? Fak squid. Fak squid vomit. Are you really not going to stay? Your strength is still needed here? Stay here and fight with you every day. No, this is already the second day of Bucky and Blade's passionate exchange. The two are not enemies, and Dao Feng also understands Bucky's meaning, although it's a little bit hateful, but men, slapping each other, throwing fists at each other, drinking a drink, and everything is over. Bucky didn't want to be friends or brothers with Blade, he didn't want to get involved in his life, let alone his mental journey, he just wanted to be a teammate, preferably not a pig teammate. So the two fought, and the fire was vented, and then formed a team to clean up a wave of vampires, which gave the Blade Warrior motivation, recalled his original intention, and kept the sadness in his heart. Let the vampire nemesis come back and continue to eliminate vampires, and Bucky's goal will be achieved. As for the vampires in Detroit, the Blade Warriors dealt with them, and the Harbin Blood Clan was led by Phil Coulson to deal with them. Bucky's mission here is basically completed. The rest of the vampires, because they lost their leader, were maimed and wiped out by Bucky and the Blade Warrior. They would definitely hide, and some would even slip through the net. Bucky didn't want to waste time here and put a lot of energy into it. So he patted the Blade Warrior on the shoulder in an awkward attitude of being a little bit reluctant, but pretending to dislike him, and just asking politely, and left gracefully. On the way home, on the private plane arranged by Howard, Bucky also washed his face, took a shower and changed clothes, and meditated for an hour before opening the long-awaited box. System information. Open the orange legendary random item box 1. Get the item, Immortal Heart. Immortal Heart, orange legend, immortal, unique, heart prosthesis, which provides strong power, manufactures special nano-robots, continuously releases them into the blood, improves blood work efficiency, and thus improves body functions. After implantation, physical attributes +5, reaction attribute +5, life value +30, energy value +15. If the user is fatally hit, Immortal Heart will quickly release a special nano repair robot to quickly repair the fatal damage and restore 300 points of health. After each repair, you need to use orange legendary item components 60, epic 150, and rare 300 to replenish. Remarks. If the brain is damaged, memory damage will still occur after repairing. Open the purple epic level random item box 1. Get the equipment, Alien Buster. Alien Nemesis, purple epic, immortal, sword weapon, DPS 197. Causes 30 times weak point damage to silver fear creatures. Double damage to any supernatural existence. Open blue rarity level random item box 3. Get rare level item components 15. Rare level quick crack components 5. Equip Blade Warrior Suit. Blade Warrior Suit. Blue excellent, immortal, 300 points of armor, 10% of all resistance, slightly enhanced silent action and stealth effects. Oh ho ho. Bucky looked at the thing that drove out, jumped up and punched violently. If it weren't for being in the plane, he could jump out with all his strength. Just an immortal heart, this trip is worth the money. And the blessing of so many attributes of immortal heart alone is enough to pay back the fare. What's more, there is also a life-saving skill, which can offset the fatal damage Bucky received once, and even if the life value drops below 0, it can be pulled back. And it's like Wolverine and Xiaojinjan, who lost their heads, and they can grow back so perverted. Of course, not to mention that it will cause memory loss, but to say that it will be replenished once it is used up, and it will make a heart attack just by looking at it bad component requirements, Bucky would never have wanted to try. But in the end, Bucky's safety factor has been greatly improved, and there will be more capital waste in the future. System, implantation of immortality. After all, it was the heart. Bucky suddenly had a palpitation, as if his chest was empty, but he recovered in an instant, and then he felt his blood boil like chicken blood, and his heart was beating violently. Did you turn on the Emperor engine? Bucky clutched his chest, although he didn't feel uncomfortable, but the obviously strong heartbeat in his chest still made him slightly uncomfortable. But after moving his body a bit, feeling stronger, faster, and in better control, Bucky quickly got used to it. His character attributes have also become, character, James Buchanan Barnes. Body 21, plus 8, response 22, plus 9, technology 4. Intelligence 16. Calm 19. HP, 440/440ths, plus 110. Gas value, 270/270ths, plus 55. Following the flickering red and blue neon color blocks in his hand, he summoned a long sword with the same style of blade. Although the hilt and the blade are in the style of a samurai sword, the sharp blade is straight, and there is no such thing as only the blade. Knowing that the handle of the knife will pop out a spiked mechanism. Bucky waved it a few times, feeling better than his trophy, the previous Murakami samurai sword, and it is a system equipment, and it has the effect of killing vampires and doubling damage to other supernatural creatures. Let him put it down. From today on, please call me a swordsman. Bucky also summoned the Blade Warrior outfit, black windbreaker and black sunglasses, and he posed with him for a long time, and played a one-man show for a long time, before he had enough of being a hero. I'm back, Daisy, Jesse, do you miss me? Uncle, you are back. Welcome back. Speechless all the way, Bucky got off the plane, went straight to the house, and caught the little Daisy who flew over, and Jessica who also ran over, but still couldn't open her mouth. Maria Hill also came to welcome her. She was dressed at home and wore an apron. She stood there peacefully and smiled softly. She looked like a blooming snowdrop on an iceberg, and Bucky almost turned into a wolf on the spot. But Bucky took a shower first, and then the family had a warm dinner. Why so much silverware? Then Bucky gave everyone the gifts he brought back, but the three found that they were all silver jewelry. It's not that I don't like it, and it's not that I don't like this cheap stuff, it's just a little strange. Why are there so many? Bucky brought back more than 20 pairs of earrings, more than 30 necklaces, more than 50 rings, and not only that, but also a lot of silver-plated tableware, silver candlesticks, etc. Funny, which muscle is wrong? Vampires? Hee hee, you see that Halloween is coming, do you want to have a vampire-style party? Afterwards, when Bucky and Hill were alone, the sage, Hill, was sweating profusely lying on Bucky's broad chest, listening to Bucky talking about this experience. Just after hearing a few words, he chuckled. Then after Bucky said to her with a serious face, the only thing I don't want is this, I'm allergic to vampires recently, and soon she couldn't laugh. Hill couldn't help hugging Bucky tightly. This world is too scary. Don't worry, I'm here, but let's buy more silverware tomorrow. One night. No words in the middle of the night. Bucky, who was sleeping with Hill in his arms, suddenly heard the phone ringing in his ears. Hey, which one? Disturbing people's dreams. What?